Hello and welcome to Hindsighting. We discuss all the movies to win the Best Picture Oscar and try to figure out if this picture truly is the best or is time rendered a different verdict. I'm Edward Clow. My guest today is a composer whose credits include the docuseries Paul T. Goldman that features 1BR, The Pact, At the Devil's Door, A Rising Tide, and Eloise. He's also scored documentaries as well as a theme that begins and ends every episode of Hindsighting. Ronen Landa, welcome to Hindsighting.
Thanks for having me.
Deep Tease will be making a special programming announcement at the end of this episode. Today we're hindsighting the Best Picture of 1951, An American in Paris. From 8 nominations, it also won Oscars for Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, and Best Score. It was nominated against Decision Before Dawn, A Place in the Sun, Quo Vadis, and A Streetcar Named Desire. So, season 1, we did the 2000s, and that was me trying to see if that decade was better than I remembered. I was very hard on the 2000s. Everyone can hear those episodes and see where I came out at the end of that. Season 2 was the 80s, which I felt was underrated and undersung, and that was me just trying to shine a light on movies that I felt were unfairly obscure and kind of evaluating some of the winners and nominees, some of which I hadn't seen, and seeing if they were as stuffy as I remembered. So now we're talking about the 1950s. This is our second episode, and I didn't think I'd have a thesis going into the 50s because it's not a decade that I lived through, nor have you. So it's something I have a lot of nostalgia for. But a friend of mine pointed out something really interesting, and I want to get your take on this. I think what was going on in the 50s in movies is kind of mirroring what's going on right now. So in the 50s, the film industry was very afraid of television. Television was this new thing. It was keeping people home. They weren't going to the movies as much. It was this existential threat. I think two things seem analogous to me. One, streaming, which has been around for about 10, 12 years now, and AI, which is a huge conversation. We still don't know what AI can do, what it can't do, what the effect is going to be. And so you see movies do these things like 3D, and we see a lot more movies in color. And they do, 235. We're seeing things shot in scope more often. It's starting to happen. So do you think I'm off base with that comparison with the 50s versus now?
I think there was a lot going on. I think it's really interesting to think about it from the standpoint of industry mechanics and trying to get butts in seats, which is a big issue now with everybody staying home.
Yeah.
So I think some of that plays in. I've been thinking about it a lot. I think in another way that kind of mirrors the present time is that we've the 50s are coming off the heels of great political upheaval, and we've experienced great political upheaval in our country here in the last decade, and I think coming off of World War II, the movies were also artistically trying to respond to that. And so I think there's so much going on. I'm curious to know because, I'm trying to think now. I hadn't thought a lot about 50s television coming into today, but there's a lot of classic television from the 50s, right?
Oh yeah. I'm not even, it's just the fact that television is showing up in more and more households and people just aren't going as much. It isn't so much a critique of what was going on TV. It's just the fact that, movies are having to share the center of pop culture with this new thing, television, as opposed to it being a thing that, because the thing that you always hear talked about is Gone with the Wind, I believe still would be the highest grossing movie if you counted for inflation, and tickets were 25 cents, but it sold so many tickets. Mm-hmm. But the counter to that is always like, well, in 1939, the only competition was radio. And there were radio plays and things like that, which you may know more about than I do. So I think that
I've been working on a thesis on a doctorate. No, I really don't know anything about radio plays.
Okay,
that's really what that's
somebody.
about.
No, I'm just saying that you might know more than I do.
No info on radio plays.
No, that's fine. But radio plays were a thing that existed, but that could not compete.
Beyond that, I know that. I know that much. Yeah,
that's maybe kind of all I know too. But they were technically on the radio now. So yeah, I think it's this idea that even in the 50s, you could look back and say, oh, well, Gone with the Wind. I'm just using that as like, not just because it's the Best Picture winner, but it's just the, it's just the lionized example of this thing that made, I think the domestic gross of that movie would be $1 billion just
Right.
domestically.
Right.
The domestic gross of Jaws would be $1 billion, Star Wars probably more than that, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. So yeah, I think your what you said about like being post political upheaval or even current political upheaval is really interesting. And one of the best picture nominees we're going to get to toward the end of the show directly deals with World War II. So yeah, I think it's this interesting. Yeah, my friend Michael Moskowitz, who will be on the show twice this season, kind of posited that to me as like that's like we're living through this now.
Well,
I
I
thought he
think
was so right.
I think once we get to, the question of, our winner of 1951, it's a massive spectacle. I mean,
Yeah.
what won was a huge spectacle
In
film
color.
in color.
Can't see that on TV. We don't have color TV for a very long time. It's worth pointing out. I believe it's well into the 60s where people have color TVs or color TVs are affordable,
Mhm.
So it's like at this moment in 1951, TVs are starting to be in more households, just like streaming.
Yeah.
It's just who has
Yeah.
Netflix,
Sure.
who's using Chat GPT. It's like it's like really
It's it's a new technology, and then you have this fight from the older technology, like how are we going to respond and adapt and keep our business, our side of the business relevant,
can we coexist?
and can we coexist, and can we offer something that people aren't going to get elsewhere?
Right. And if you look at the Best Picture nominees here and the Best Picture nominees even from our previous episode, 1950, you're seeing this mixture of color and black and white, things shot on location, things shot on stages, So I think what movies do, and I think it's the movie's betterment, is that, I think there's some cheap things like, I have a love-hate relationship with 3D, but there was like smell-o-vision and like all these things like William Castle things that were
Yeah.
like these stunts. But all the studios are they each had their own proprietary widescreen. It's like Fox Vision and like VistaVision is Paramount and things like
Mhm.
that. And now we just have 235. But like so I think I think as far as cinematography, it was a good thing.
Right.
It was, I'm sure cinematographers were like, great, I get to shoot in a higher aspect ratio. We get to shoot on location. I get to shoot in color. I think it was a good thing, even if it came from the kind of a mercenary place. At least looking
Sure.
back on it, hindsighting,
Sure.
looking back on it 70 years later.
I think it's probably interesting, and I didn't research this, but I'm curious over the decades. The film orchestra also expanded. Today's film orchestras very very regularly around 100 people,
Really?
even before we get to choirs, and sometimes it's another 100-person choir, and
Wow.
on massive, on huge tentpole movies, easily. And so many, and then once you get all the musicians involved, I mean, we're talking about these absolutely incredibly huge forces. And in the early days, the orchestras were rather small. This mirrors what happened in the concert world. A Mozart orchestra is relatively small, and by the time you get to Wagner, Strauss, you have these very very massive orchestras. And so film was adapting from that. Certainly, like the Wagnerian and Straussian kind of language played big in some of these scores. But and so they're picking up on that. But I think this is also a response to television in a way,
Sure.
where some of that stuff was going to be small. Television has always had that kind of, well, we've got to get things done quickly, and maybe cheaply, not as not necessarily, but
Yeah, well, if you look at, I remember I, this is going to come up a lot, especially in this episode. I'm a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan, and I rented years ago Alfred Hitchcock Presents, like the first season. They put it on DVD. It was like 50 episodes.
mhm.
Crazy. Like, and I think that was very typical. I think TV ran a lot longer. I mean, it probably still ran like September to June or whatever, and then there were reruns on in the summer, but the amount of episodes they were doing was insane.
Yeah.
So much more than what we do now. I mean, now the television landscape, that's a different podcast.
Now it's a whole
It's a whole different thing. But when we were
it's
growing
true.
up, because we're similar in age, network TV was 22 episodes. It would be on
Right.
from like late September to like late May. It was like a school year pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
It was 22.
And then
maybe
you get the
reruns in the summer.
Yeah.
That's what network TV was pretty much into this century.
Right.
You know, that doesn't change until well into the 21st century.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's
streaming changed that for sure.
Streaming changed that also, but before streaming, you were still, you know, all through my 20s, I was still watching network TV.
That was the way.
That was the way, and it was that way for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that gets upended. So let's move on to An American in Paris. But first, some trivia and some stats. Leslie Caron was only able to work every other day. She tired easily due to starvation during World War II and was not used to the rigorous filming schedule. So there's the war coming back. Even though Vincent Minnelli is credited as the sole director, he was sometimes tied up with his divorce from Judy Garland and other directing projects, leaving Gene Kelly to take over the directing duties, much to the dismay of the cast and crew, who disliked him due to his condescending attitude and snide remarks. And that's going to come up a lot. Not the snide remarks, which is Gene Kelly, behind the camera. Despite the objections of Gene Kelly, who wanted to shoot on location in Paris, the movie was shot at MGM Studios in California on 44 sets built for the film. It was reportedly difficult for the studio to secure travel arrangements or location for shooting. 2 shots in the picture are from Paris, but they don't involve Kelly. So we're going to talk about that a lot, the fact that this is studio bound, but there's at least an appetite to go abroad.
Yeah. I think that may have been looking back on the movie, I think that may have been a win.
I agree. We're going to get into that, but I actually do agree with you. When this film won the Oscar for Best Picture, MGM was surprised. As a result, the studio took out a full-page ad in the trade paper Variety with their mascot Leo the Lion looking chagrined and sheepishly admitting, "Honestly, I was just sitting in the sun waiting for a streetcar," a reference to likelier Best Picture winners A Place in the Sun and A Streetcar Named Desire. So we're going to get into that. This is the first movie to win Best Picture at the Oscars and Best Picture Musical or Comedy at the Golden Globe Awards. Only the second color film to win the Best Picture Oscar, 12 years after the first, Gone with the Wind, which we were just talking about. Between 1927 and 1961, only 7 color films were awarded. So versus being American in Paris, Greatest Show on Earth, Around the World in 80 Days, Bridge on the River Kwai, Gigi, and Ben-Hur. All movies we're going to discuss on this season. All those movies came out in the 1950s. Following The Apartment in 1960, only 2 black and white movies have won the Best Picture Oscar, Schindler's List and The Artist.
Wow.
Yeah. This is the first Best Picture Oscar winner to win Best Original Screenplay. It's also the only full musical film to win the Best Original Screenplay in the history of the Academy Award. This is one of the few Best Picture winners to not only not win a single acting Oscar, but also fail to receive a single nomination for any of its performers. This has come up a few times on this podcast, but this is one of only 11 musicals to win Best Picture. The others are The Broadway Melody, The Great Ziegfeld, Going My Way, Gigi, West Side Story, My Fair Lady, The Sound of Music, Oliver, Amadeus, and Chicago. So we've already covered 2 of those movies on the show.
Amadeus a musical?
You know, it's funny. I don't know that Amadeus is a musical, but I think because so much music is being performed, I mean, so much of that movie is, it's debatable.
I'm gonna have a technical, we'll have a technical off mic debate about that. Yeah,
I'm not. This isn't my stat. Amadeus might not be considered a musical, so maybe it goes down to 10 movies.
Maybe it goes down to 10. Yeah.
Amadeus is more of a music biopic. When we did that episode,
really, that's what I would call it.
Yeah. Okay. So you know what? I think you're right. I will scratch that from there. So it is now one of 10 American musicals to win Best Picture. I think you're absolutely right, though. I think it is definitely about music, but it's much more of a music biopic.
Yeah.
It's like the Bob Dylan movie. Which we talked about on that episode. We compared it a lot to music biopics, like Bohemian Rhapsody and the Bob Dylan movie.
I mean, it's a fantastical biopic. It's not really
which we also covered.
Accurate.
Oh, no, we went, listen to that episode. We very much debunked it as fact, which I'm not even sure it was trying to present itself.
But maybe one of my favorite movies. Okay.
Yeah, great movie. You can hear that episode in the previous season. 2 more things. At 1 hour and 55 minutes, it is number 22 in ascending length of Best Pictures. Number 23 if you count Sunrise, which we'll litigate if that counts in a later episode. It is number 84 on the box office list of Best Pictures with a worldwide gross of $4 million. That's obviously unadjusted. Let's talk about American in Paris.
American in Paris.
Yeah. So you had not seen this before?
I had not seen it before.
Nor I.
I encountered it immediately. I was kind of surprised because I didn't even know a lot about it.
No, no, neither did I.
And I allowed myself to just kind of go in, not really reading about it ahead of time.
Yeah, me too.
I'm like, oh, this is a Gershwin thing.
Yeah.
And it's surprising because Gershwin had died 20 years earlier or something like that.
Oh, he'd been gone that long?
Yeah.
I don't even think, to be honest with you, I don't think I even knew that he was gone.
I don't remember his actual dates.
But he's definitely gone in 51 minutes.
But he's definitely, I believe he died in the 30s. He also died. He died, I think he was 38 when he died.
Oh, wow.
It's George Gershwin, not Ira. Ira was alive.
Right.
And so, so it was very interesting because in a way, it immediately reminded me of what we have today on Broadway, which are these jukebox musicals.
What is that?
And a jukebox musical is usually like a Broadway musical that's kind of assembled from a catalog, right?
Okay.
So it can be one artist, like when they did the ABBA musical, when they did,
right,
or when they do. I'm trying to remember. They've done a lot of them at this point for a lot of artists.
It's a great example though, because I know what that is. Because they took the ABBA music, and they took the ABBA music and they built a show around it.
They built a show around,
as opposed to it being a book with original music.
Correct.
Okay.
So they've done that. I've also seen jukebox musicals that would take like a genre. I think there was one from like Motown. There was like a variety of Motown music. Okay. So they we'll take a catalog and
build a show
around the show around that.
And that's what this is?
Well, I mean, I think that this qualifies as a jukebox musical because you have Gershwin music from different parts of Gershwin's career that are throughout the, obviously An American in Paris is Gershwin. Mm-hmm. So, and that much I knew going in, but it was, but then they brought in, the concerto in F, and they brought in, I Got Rhythm and
right.
It's Lovely and all these classic Gershwin tunes. So, so they really kind of built the music around, his body of work. And I hadn't realized that it was that extensive. I kind of imagined that they would use a theme or something like that. Mm-hmm. And, so as a composer, that was kind of like my first reaction to it.
Sure.
And was to enjoy Gershwin, but it also kind of brought up a lot of questions for me. I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, we're doing this, 20 years after he died, and I'm watching it, and in the theaters not long ago, we had the Michael Jackson movie.
Right.
We had Michael, which I did not see.
I haven't seen it.
I heard maybe I should not see it.
I'm curious about it because to me, I mean, I haven't seen it, so obviously I can't comment on it. To me, I'm expecting it to be about what Bohemian Rhapsody was. It's not a great movie, but I like Queen. I like the music.
Right.
So I can enjoy it on a superficial.
And I think, that is really a biopic, but I think it's just kind of interesting. There's a certain amount of time that passes after someone dies.
Yeah.
After kind of a notable artist dies. And it seems like there's kind of let's go back to their work and see what we can kind of.
Jackson's been gone 17 years at this point.
Yeah. And similarly, George Gershwin had been dead for something similar.
Right.
So, I found that to be fascinating. That was kind of like one of my first reactions to the movie.
Yeah. I'm glad. I don't remember if you chose or I signed this movie to you, but obviously as somebody who, as a musician, you would have a take on this that I wouldn't have. My first reaction, and it's very superficial, but I think it kind of links back to the conversation we were having a few minutes ago, is I just wrote down the colors in this thing really pop. This is it's just so lush, and I think it's a real, whether it's out of desperation or necessity, Vincent Minnelli really it has a really lush look. And I think I've already been watching a lot of movies, both in color and black and white, from all over this decade, but particularly 1551. We did the 50th episode last week, of course. And there was one movie I watched from 1950. I can't remember the name of it. It was just so it was with Lee J. Cobb and John Dahl. It was a kind of a noir, but it was in color, and it looked like it had been colorized. Remember in the 80s
Mm-hmm.
how Ted Turner was colorizing stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I actually was like, wait, is this colorized? But this is not a sad thing. I think all the colorized prints of things are just gone. That was a fad. So what I'm trying to say is this other movie, the name I can't remember, the color just didn't look right. It didn't. Okay. It could have been the transfer I saw. It just looked like they were trying to figure it out, even though there are color movies in the 40s, but they're very rare. This is just so lush and you
It
know,
it's visually, I mean, it's visually, like, stunning, and
yeah,
I was so I was taken, I mean, the music being kind of my first reaction,
of
but
course, yeah.
all this happening at the same time, the colors, I mean, are so, and this is a very obvious argument, or a very obvious thing to say if you're not, if you're a filmmaker, but like that process, that what is three stripe process, the Technicolor process,
Yeah.
um, is just so much more vibrant than what we are used to today. I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
like,
there's the problem today, and there's thousands of video essays right now, and this kind of ties in a little bit to the thesis for this whole season, is that a lot of movies just don't look good today. A lot of them they're shot on, like on green screens, and they just don't, they look kind of like washed out or blown out. And even
yeah,
these things that, or they look like they're just done on a computer, like they don't look real.
yeah.
And I don't think it's a digital versus film thing. I know some people would take it there. I know with like Christopher Nolan and
I feel like that
Tarantino.
was an argument like 15 years ago, and I
Exactly.
think it's been solved at
I
this
think it's been
point.
solved. There's a great documentary, which I
Yeah.
think I've sort of vaunted before, called Side by Side, that's produced by Keanu Reeves, and he's in it as an interviewer, and he talks to, James Cameron and Fincher and Nolan and Soderbergh about digital versus film. That was a big thing that came up in our 2000s.
Whoa.
Our 2000.
Sorry, just wanted to.
um, um, I highly recommend that documentary. I agree that is solved. I don't think it's a digital versus film thing. I mean, I think the fact
Yeah.
that because David Fincher shoots things digitally and they look
Well, I
incredible.
don't think film. I mean, even film from much later. Film movies. I'm thinking like 80s movies or 90s movies. Like you compared to what we saw in American in Paris, like
Right.
the color is a completely different
Yeah. Well,
experience,
I
and
think it
it's almost
ties also.
psychedelic. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I was really like, I mean, this is pre psychedelia
Sure.
in the culture,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was not pre surrealist. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I'm thinking about like
Dali. Yeah.
Dali, and it seemed like there were some like kind of there were a lot of kind of art references. I mean, obviously there's Jerry Mulligan's an artist, but it seemed like the way that the movie was constructed was in somewhat in reference to like maybe impressionist art, or all kinds of different, like,
Yeah.
and the colors were incredible. There was another thing that popped out at me immediately, which was, and I'm actually interested because I hadn't heard about the onset strife with Gene Kelly, and I'm interested in that. But the opening scene with Gene Kelly, how he immediately, he's going through, this is in his apartment, in his
Right.
little apartment, and it immediately becomes a ballet. Like,
Yeah.
the first thing in the movie is somebody doing normal everyday activities, and his movement. And so, like, that was another thing that immediately popped at me. And I think this is really like, here we are in 2026, and we're looking back all these years, 75 years, and
Yeah.
this is rare. Like, we don't see colors like that anymore.
No. Very rarely.
We don't see movement like that. That was, I mean, Gene Kelly coming after Fred Astaire. I mean, like, this was a big part of the culture,
Yeah.
and it's not anymore. I mean, I'm trying to think
Yeah.
who.
I think the thing is, yeah. What's interesting is, I looked it up because one thing we're going to sort of be talking about, which I think is kind of in conversation with this movie in good ways and bad, is Singing in the Rain, which comes out the next year, which Kelly co-directs with Stanley Donen. Now, Kelly had already made a movie with Stanley Donen, I think On the Town is 2 years before this.
Mhm.
So I think the reason, I'm not defending the man, I think the reason that Gene Kelly was maybe difficult on the set is because he was a perfectionist and he had a very definite idea about showcasing. It was about the dance. I don't think, and again, I haven't researched this that heavily. I think he was definitely very, because Debbie Reynolds talked about how intense he was.
Yeah.
Not that he was abusive or anything, but that he was just like, almost like that character in Whiplash. Like, again, not throwing chairs at your head, but like he was beyond perfectionist. And I think, and again, I'm not defending him. Maybe he was a fucking asshole. I mean, there's certainly
Well, I
evidence
mean,
to support both claims.
I mean, how do you put together that what is it, like a 17-minute sequence
Oh, the end? We'll
at
talk
the
about
end?
that. Yeah.
You know, I mean, how do you put that together if you're not?
Yeah. I mean,
You
well,
know, I mean, how do you do that?
yeah. But what I
You
think,
know?
what I think, yeah, I think when Gene Kelly is dancing, I think this movie is hitting really hard.
Mhm.
My issues. Let's just go to this now.
Wait, can I just
Okay,
go can
please.
I just want to caveat one thing because about the movement and today. I don't I
Yeah,
was
yeah, please.
as I said it, as I said, like, we don't see this today, I thought of an example
Okay.
who's a person that I know and really admire, um, is, there's an actor, his name is Mark Steger, and
Okay.
Mark Steger is, has been in a couple movies that I've worked on, but I think his main claim to fame these days in the pop culture is that he played the Demogorgon in Stranger Things in season 1 of Stranger Things, and
Okay.
and
My daughter would know who that is.
yeah,
'Cause she just watched
she
Stranger
just
Things.
watched
Like
Stranger.
she just watched the whole show.
Well, if you watch season 1, I know he's in season 1. I'm not sure if he's in other seasons, but he's been in a few horror films as that I've worked on as you know, a monster character or in one case a serial killer character, but um interestingly, and I know his background comes from dance and athletics, and
Right.
his approach to acting is really movement based,
Right.
and so it seems like it can come in these kind of like niche
Yeah.
avenues, but I guess we're not seeing that
We
kind
don't.
of like level of like I'm gonna make a movie and people are just gonna watch me dance on screen for a while.
Well,
Like
the music.
that's what we don't see.
Right. Well, I've said this before, and I said this all through the '80s season. I think musicals and westerns are two genres that die and they come back, and they die and they come back. Whereas all the other genres maybe have, like fallow periods, but they don't die. Like
Hmm.
action movies have never gone away. Thrillers have never gone away. Never gone away. Horror movies have never gone away. Comedies have never gone away. Musicals, we saw it just in the past 5 years. Like we saw, you know, what was it, Into the Heights and West Side Story. And I really love
Sure.
West Side Story.
Yeah.
They didn't do well, and
Yeah.
then it went away. But then we saw Wicked, at least the first one, do
Sure.
incredibly well.
Sure.
And that's only in a 3-year period. And I
Yeah.
think westerns are the same. And westerns might even be worse because westerns are so specific a genre because they can only take place within like a 15, 20-year period, and it's a very limited time period. Musicals could take place, at least theoretically, today, 50 years ago, in the future, whatever. You've more,
We
which
need,
is something I think people
we need
don't
more
realize.
sci-fi musicals.
I mean, but
I mean,
you could do that, but that's an
kinda
option.
writing
But
one.
we don't have. I think the musical, as we're recording this, I won't say it's dead, but it's not the center. I think in the '50s. I mean, look, there's two movies. This and Gigi, same director, not an accident. Both win the Best Picture Oscar.
Yeah.
In the '60s, I mean, I read that list. Most of those movies are in like a 15-year period. Like it's a really tight period of those movie musicals. Because when Chicago came out, and we talked all about this in the Chicago episode.
Mhm.
That's almost 25 years ago now, and that was like,
Wow.
yeah, 2002. So it's 24 years
It
ago.
was 2002.
2002 won Best Picture. That was our very third
And
episode.
you're saying that 2002 was nearly 25 years ago. Is that what you're implying here?
I'm implying
Okay.
that we
Wow.
haven't had a musical win Best Picture since 2002. La La
That's
Land was
amazing.
14 years after, and obviously
And it
came very
didn't
close.
and didn't win.
It didn't win, but what I'm saying is like that was, if it was the '60s, there'd be like a bunch of Chicago's and a bunch of La La Lands. I mean, there'd be a bunch of musicals that were
Sure.
like big budget that would be box office hits, and people would
But
see.
I think
good or not.
I think in a way what's different, and I'm not even talking, I'm not even talking about the I mean, sure, musicals, yes, but there's something about dance
Yeah.
with Gene Kelly and kind of having like kind of like this lead dancer
Yeah.
that I mean, I'm thinking to some of these other examples that you mentioned, and I'm thinking, oh, there's on some there. I mean, Wicked had this very interesting dance between between the witches,
Right.
um
But it wasn't. Yeah. I mean.
but but generally it wasn't a dance forward film in the same way, and I think
agree.
generally there's a lot of cinema around. If there's going to be dancing on screen now, there's a lot of cinema around it. There's a lot of how is the camera working with the dance, and
Mm.
whereas in American in Paris there would, I mean, I feel like there would be these really simple setups, and it's just like let Gene Kelly do his thing.
It was like, yeah, I think it's a good point. I think Singing in the Rain, not to keep going back to that, is a similar thing where they're just pretty wide
Hmm.
and it's staged well enough that they're not doing a lot of coverage.
Hmm.
It's not a lot of coverage. I think that's maybe what you're
Yeah,
saying. They're not cutting into it that much.
that's right.
They're not, the camera's fairly static, not in an
Yeah, not
unimaginative way.
yeah.
Because the sets in this movie I think are really beautiful and they're designed well. The design of it is very dance forward. So I think it isn't
Yeah.
so much musicals that we're talking about is dance.
Dance.
Because and Gene Kelly's a perfectly good singer, but that's not what he's famous for.
Right.
Like he's a good singer, but that's not what we remember him
No,
for. We
I
remember him
mean,
as being a dancer, and he's a pretty good actor. At least he's convincing in this part.
I think he's convincing in this
Yeah,
part,
so I'm saying
yeah.
like he's a good actor. He's not Brando, who we'll talk about later in this episode.
Yes,
So the
we
dance,
have to talk about.
yeah, but the dance is the big thing here, and I think that not being such an expert on him, but just what I've read about this and Singing in the Rain, his other movies, I think he was difficult because of the demands he made on himself about showcasing dance and
Sure.
I
I
think
mean, look,
that's what it was.
you look at him even as a dancer, and even in this film, you see so many approaches to dance. You see,
Yeah.
he's clearly very well versed in ballet.
Yes.
He's very well versed in tap.
Yes.
He has access to a lot of dance styles. His physique, is kind of just. I mean, he's gorgeous to look at.
Yeah,
I
he's
mean,
very fit.
The way he's
Yeah.
fit, but and graceful, and the way he can move is so mesmerizing.
And the way he's costumed.
And-
we have to talk about that.
Yeah,
He's
oh my
costumed
God.
very well
Oh
because
my
it
God,
doesn't
the
look
costumes
because
are
they
incredible.
look like I mean he's very fit, he's very handsome, and he's costumed well because he's able to move in those costumes, but they don't look like break. I don't even
That's
know what I'm
right.
saying.
Yeah.
So I mean,
No, absolutely.
that's the thing we have to talk about too a little bit. That
He was showcased well in that, but I think all I'm thinking about in terms of his like how intense he must have been on set, just what kind of personality it takes
yes,
to be able to master
right,
these styles, to perform them at that level,
right.
and then choreograph them at that level. This is an impressive artist.
I completely agree, and I think
Yeah.
that he's the. I mean, he kind of is this movie. He's also the best thing about this movie, and I think it's something like Singing in the Rain.
You mean as far as actors goes?
Well, no, I mean just but the best element of this movie.
Okay.
Yes, the
Okay.
acting thing, but we'll get into that.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
I mean, look, he's the main character. It's not like
I mean, Gershwin was pretty good too.
no, but the Gershwin stuff is already
It's already established.
It's already
at that time.
established. It
Yeah.
wasn't like he wrote this stuff. I'm not discounting Gershwin. I'm just
Yeah.
saying like to your point, that was already there.
Okay, yeah.
So that already existed.
Yeah.
If this was all, and I have a push pull with some of the numbers in this movie. So let's get into it a little
Let's
more.
get into it.
So I'm gonna get into it in a minute. I don't love the character that Oscar Levant plays.
Yeah, the pianist.
The pianist. I don't know his name, but he has one line in the beginning that I really love when they're being introduced where he says, it's not a great face, but underneath its flabby exterior is an enormous lack of character. Like that was a great line.
Yeah. He had some good acerbic lines.
I'm gonna get it more into him. Adam is his name in the movie.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
so we can use, and I know he's a real composer, and I'm going to talk a lot about
Yeah,
him.
and he was a real and pianist. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he
So,
could do it.
There's a shot I love, I think it's too granular, where I think they do it twice, where Gene Kelly's walking down the stairs and the camera's kind of panning with him,
Mhm.
and he's going down that staircase. So that was a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just him walking down the stairs. He's like talking to the cleaning lady.
Right.
I think they do it twice. I thought that was like kind of a nice, small, but really cool flex. It was again like, can't do this on TV. Like you can't.
Sure.
Like we have this crane and like they
Well,
built
I
the
mean,
set.
the whole movie is a flex against TV. Once you frame
Yes.
it that way.
I think it is. I don't think it's it's not its sole purpose and it's
No.
not its sole value, but I think a lot of these movies we're talking about are flexes against TV.
And I think, I mean, you can even look at the Gershwin of it, like in a way saying like Gershwin was already a cultural force. I mean, he was dead at this point and had already made his mark,
But not
and
forgotten, yeah.
and very much not forgotten, in a way saying we're claiming this mantle of kind of like American culture. You could certainly,
Yeah.
I think, make that argument.
So
Um,
this might be a thing against Gershwin. I don't like this song in the cafe. I just think that I just wrote down cafe song is dumb, which I think is the first song we hear where they're huddled around the piano. It's
Yeah.
it's the three main characters.
Right.
So it's It's Gene Kelly, Oscar Levin, and Henri. Or what's his name?
Henri.
It's Jerry, Adam, and Henri.
Right.
And it's probably the only scene it's one of the few scenes the three of them are in together. And I just don't like that song.
Until later. It was Georges Guattari.
Is that his name?
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Well, we're just going to call him Henri.
Yeah, Henri.
Henri.
Yeah.
I just wrote down the cafe song is dumb. I also wrote down the second song is better. I think there's a push-pull, like some of the numbers I really like, some of them I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this was like the jukebox of it all in a way.
There's no cohesion.
Like, yeah.
I think that's my problem.
Right. So it wasn't composed for the movie. And so they're kind of stitching it together.
Right.
And
I think that might be my issue.
And by the way, I've worked on a project like this. I spec'd out. I'm not going to go into the details of it because it didn't get launched. We didn't get approval. But I worked on a jukebox musical proposal. I put together a pitch for a jukebox musical of sorts, and that is the hard thing to do. I worked with an amazing writer, Rob Kuttner, and we spent months essentially figuring out how do you build a story around these songs that don't actually go together, or that have elements that go together, but like the story doesn't quite fit. So how do you do that? It's a really difficult challenge.
Yeah, not impossible. I'm not saying I'm not against this as a concept.
Not
by
impossible,
any
but
means.
also, I mean, I don't know the history of how long they spent putting together this movie, but I wonder if like they even had time to think about this stuff. I think it was some of it was more like just plug it in there,
Well, we're still in the studio system, which I think I really haven't had a chance to talk about on this show because it did not exist in the 2000s, nor did it exist in the 80s. And I think the studio system is an interesting thing. I don't think I even talked about it last week with All About Eve. I think it's an interesting thing because I think there are obvious pitfalls because it's like a factory and an assembly line. But I also think the greatest studio movie, arguably, as far as the system, is Casablanca.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was assigned to Casablanca, and it turned out really great. I'm not saying it's the only good one. I think a lot of these artisans didn't overthink things, and I think that more good came from that. But what you're saying, maybe more time with this in the oven, and neither one of us knows what the gestation of this is.
Yeah,
there might have been a better, because I like the setup. Like I like the story. So when we meet the Nina Fox character, I don't know her name, the blonde who's like his
Milo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. So when we meet Milo, I like that scene because it's kind of a meet cute, even though they're not really. But I think it's Jerry who says, these like first year art students come here and they're always making the profound observations they've overheard. Like that's a great line. And I think the movie flirts with some ideas that it doesn't seem to have time for. Like it doesn't seem to have time for this frustrated artist who's been here.
When you throw in a 20-minute dance sequence at the end, that's you kind of run out of time on some of the other things. But
but
but those were some I remember watching that moment and that line and feeling very much like as an artist, like, some of these concerns are timeless. Some of these issues that artists face are really timeless.
And that's when I think this movie, those are the moments where I think this movie works the best.
Yeah.
I think I won't say frustrated because I think this movie is very breezy and I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm going to say a lot of things about this movie that I don't like. This movie went down smooth for me. Except for one thing, which I'll get to in a minute. Soon. Was one thing in this movie that I felt at times grounded to a halt. And, well, fuck it. I'll just say it now. So I think that the Adam character.
Thank you.
What's that?
Thank you for saying it now and not keeping me waiting.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I just realized there's no reason to. The Adam character, the composer. I find him incredibly annoying. And I think, and what's interesting is I found him more annoying retroactively because I watched.
Is this weird that I'm feeling defensive?
No. It's not because he's a composer. I think that his little fantasy scene of him playing all the instruments is great. I think the guy's an incredible musician.
Yeah.
I don't think he's even an actor first. It's not that I think he's a bad actor, meaning like it's not that I think he's unconvincing. I just think he's he mugs a lot. It's a lot. I'm not even really sure he needs to be in the story.
He's not really in this. I mean, his role in the story is really just to facilitate that one kind of like, penny drop moment that we're talking about.
Like,
the same
I know
person.
both these guys are into the same girl.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the only
right.
That was really his only kind of narrative purpose, and it was so minor.
It was so minor, and I also think that this guy's a little old for his part. I looked it up. He's like 45.
Yeah, that is old.
And it seemed like he's like, I'm here on this scholarship, and I understand, like,
yep,
GI Bill and all that other stuff. Like Gene Kelly's like a couple years out of the army or something. He says that. Right. So I don't bump on that with him. I don't need this guy to be like 20 years old, but it's just
there was something. There was I agree that was. I can also understand why, they wanted a real musician, 110%. Real pianist in there who could do it.
Yeah, when he's playing, the guy's a magnificent musician.
Yeah,
and that scene where he's playing,
he's got good kind of stage presence as a performer,
right?
But
not as an actor,
as a musical performer.
Yes,
I should say.
Yes.
To me, I mean, I have been turning over that fantasy sequence more than the ballet in a way, more than the ending.
The one where he's playing all the instruments.
Yeah, so he's playing, the I believe it's the agitato movement from Gershwin's Concerto in F.
Yeah.
And which is, I mean, this is brilliant music.
Yes.
Gershwin died, as we said earlier, I think he was 37, 38 of a brain tumor. And, like so many of these, like Mozart, we were talking about Mozart earlier, who also died. I think he was 34, 35, 34 maybe.
We talked about the Amadeus episode. He's very young.
I mean, these are brilliant musicians, and you can't help but wonder, Gershwin in a weird way, is in my musical mind is kind of like this just short of genius composer, and it's almost frustrating sometimes because he was right there, and then
had he lived though,
but had he lived, you wonder. But certainly as a pianist, I mean, what he was able to do was incredible, and that's one of my favorite pieces. And I can't make sense of the sequence. I mean, I've been trying. Like, why
can't make sense?
Why does that sequence exist in the movie?
Yeah,
I
agree.
And other than maybe what we were talking about before, like this like fantasy spectacle, but like artistically, and it's kind of psychedelic. He is the pianist, he's the conductor, he's
the only person in it.
He's the only, I mean, like, kind of like there are other orchestra people in there, but like only.
Don't they all look like him?
Well, when they close up whenever they do a close up, it's him.
Right.
But whenever they don't, there were actual musicians there.
Right.
Probably a union thing.
Also CG not being, they couldn't do what they could
do
now.
Yeah. Now
put his head on.
They would have just put his head on everything. But like, what was it doing there? I mean, like,
it's a good question.
It's just like
it was filler.
It's a flex. It's filler. It's weird. It's just like being weird for weird's sake, which I think is cool. Like, I don't hate that. And in a way, like, this is some of the stuff that, like, even the fact that I can't make sense of it is redeeming to me in a way. Like sometimes, like, this makes me feel like, oh, I mean, I know we haven't rendered verdicts yet, but like, does it deserve the Oscar? I mean, like, the fact that it was willing to be so weird for no particular reason is something that gets me kind of excited.
Yeah, I like the swing of it. I'll here's what it was. So I rewatched Singing in the Rain after I saw this, and I'd seen Singing in the Rain a few times. And the Donald O'Connor character, Cosmo, who serves the same plot function, like he's the best friend, is this character done right? I know, but he plays a musician in that too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's an accident. I just think that even though Donald O'Connor, like Gene Kelly, was a dancer first, I just think he's given more to do in the story.
Yeah.
And he's just better. And he's also similar in age. I'm not trying to be ageist. I just feel like because Henri's got
being
like
ageist against men in their mid 40s.
Well, the thing is, Henri is probably
at this particular table, Ed. I don't know how we're doing.
Well, the thing is, Henri's got like gray hair, but he seems still like a contemporary of Gene Kelly. They seem closer in age, even though he's got gray hair. And I don't know, just it just seemed like Adam, the character, was almost like a proto like Walter Matthau. He just seemed like a slob and slovenly and kind of like, I'm hungry, invite me for dinner. You know, like he was just, he was annoying.
It was filler. I
Yeah.
agree. It was just filler, and even that sequence was filler, and it was like kind of like giving him
Right.
just a few minutes to just kind of show off his piano
But
skills.
taking time away
and
from
I
the
love
story.
and I love the concerto in F, but like
Yeah.
I'm like, why am I watching this in the middle of a movie?
A movie that has root that we don't have.
And-
you're taking time away from Leslie Caron and Gene Kelly.
And you know, if we start talking about this comparatively, can we talk about it comparatively?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You know, like you know, you look at the movie that actually won a lot of the, like, we didn't mention it, like, but you know, remind me all the Oscars that this movie won in
Yeah, it won screenplay, cinematography, art direction, costume design, and score.
Screenplay, art direction, costume design. I'm missing one. Score, art direction. So, you know, what it didn't win was like best director.
It didn't win best director. Yeah, George Stevens wins for A Place in the Sun. Minelli is nominated, and this was very rare. I talk about this a lot. It's very rare. It's less rare now, but it still doesn't happen often where picture and director are split as far as what wins.
Right.
But what's interesting is that George Stevens, jumping ahead a little bit, he wins another Oscar for Giant in 1956, 5 years later, but Giant does not win Best Picture. So that might be a stat. I'll get to that in the 56 episode. So this guy won 2 directing Oscars, but his movie lost both times, which is interesting.
Which is really fascinating.
I don't think that's happened. That's rare if it's happened at all.
Right, that's really rare. So
usually, if you win Best Director 2 times, one of your movie wins one of those times.
And A Place in the Sun won a few others, I believe.
It did, I think.
So, you know, I think it won Best Editing.
A Place in the Sun wins director, screenplay, different category than this one. Black and white cinematography, black and white costume design, and it does win editing. And it wins score for a dramatic comedy picture, Franz Waxman.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about score stuff.
Right, but things were split again. See, things are split. Black and white and for costuming and cinematography. And so, it's a real split here.
And so it's a split, but it seems like, you know, in a way, like the storytelling. I mean, I guess screenplay went to both of them, but you know, A Place in the Sun is like feels like a cohesive narrative.
Oh, absolutely. It's also, yeah, I mean, it's also not a musical. Not that musicals can't be cohesive. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting.
It's a really interesting split. I mean, to me, that was a really interesting split that, you know, where A Place in the Sun gets these kind of narrative accolades and you know, these, you know, and these things that that are spectacle, you know, go to An American in Paris.
Well, that's the push-pull here, because if you look, and we're going to talk about the Best Picture nominees in a little bit, but if you look at just what's nominated, I think I opened with this, but I think it bears repeating. You see a real split between not just color and black and white, but like spectacle and like actual drama. You know, like,
I mean, this is not different from what I mean, this has been you know,
we're seeing that split now. But
we always see. I mean, this is the story of the Academy Awards in a way, right?
Yeah. It's always the same. Like, so you have like
it is La La Land and Moonlight. You know,
exactly. La La Land, Moonlight's a great example. But like even, yeah, I mean, just this year that we just had, like, you know, you've F1 and you have Sinners and you have One Battle After Another and Sentimental Value. I mean, you're seeing with more nominees. That's a big thing that runs through this podcast is, do we need more than 5 nominees? Now, the decade we're talking about now, we're limited to 5. But the one thing about the 10, and we talked all about this in our Hurt Locker episode, which was the first time we went back to 10. Mm-hmm. We had 10 from like 27 to like 43, and then from 44 to like 08, it was 5. And we went back up to 10 for pretty pathetically mercenary reasons, because Dark Knight was not nominated. And no one, you know, it was just it was an overcorrection for that. But I do think, and Eric Garcia, my guest on that episode, made this point, is that if you have 10, in theory, you can have a greater variety of just the scale of movie. You can do big things, small things, everything in between. And I think even within the 5 and the 50s, you are seeing a bit of a push and pull. But I don't want to jump ahead, because we are going to talk about these 5 movies, all 5 of which I've seen. I know you've seen a few of them.
I saw a few of them.
But another line I liked, I didn't write down a ton of dialogue from this movie that I liked. Not that the dialogue is bad. It's just so much this movie is song and dance. But I liked when he's with Milo I guess like when they're like they're about to go out and he says, "That's quite a dress you almost have on. What holds it up?" And she says, "Modesty."
Yeah.
That was yeah,
No,
like
I feel like, there were quite a few cute lines,
right.
and
And that's what I was missing. I don't want this to be wall to wall dialogue, but again, like Singing in the Rain strikes this incredible balance of really good music,
yeah.
incredibly. I mean, I'll just say that my favorite musical of all time is Singing in the Rain, and I saw it pretty late in life. I was like in my 30s when I saw it. I didn't see it as a kid, but it's got really great music. It's incredibly well staged because Kelly co-directs it,
Yeah.
so he's no one to blame,
Yeah.
and the dialogue is good, and it has a story. It has a propulsive, cohesive story. I think that movie throws a lot of cold water on this because I find this movie choppy, but
It's super choppy.
it's really choppy, and I don't think it's atypical for a musical in the 50s. I don't
To
think
be
it's
choppy.
yes, I'm saying I don't think this is like egregiously choppy. I think, if we went and saw this in 1951 with that frame of reference, we wouldn't have this reaction. And obviously, you're subtracting 75 years of, you know, of cinematic history and
Right.
world history that follows it. But one thing I want to talk about though that I think is really interesting, and I think the sets in this movie are absolutely beautiful.
Incredible.
I think that the set by the Seine, which he go to a couple times,
Yeah.
is stunning. And I don't necessarily, having been to Paris, I don't necessarily think it passes for real,
Yeah.
but it reminded me, and a movie we're going to talk about in a couple episodes or a couple years down, reminded me of Rear Window, which is my
Mhm.
favorite set in movie history.
Okay.
Now you can look at the Rear Window set and say that's not real, but I don't know that that's a strike against it. It's like
Well, I mean,
functionally real, and I think it's just so beautiful. And I think that the sunset, I mean, all the sets of this movie are beautiful. I just focusing on that one because it's like the way it's lit and the way they actually have some water there.
Yeah.
It's not like if someone said, "Oh, if somebody said, "Oh, I didn't realize they didn't shoot this on location," that's credible. But if someone said, like, "I didn't for one second think they wanted a soundstage,"
Well, I
that
mean,
doesn't make the sets less
there were a
beautiful.
lot of like, and there were a lot of like, painted backdrops here,
Yeah, but they're beautiful.
and they're gorgeous. I mean, and that's and I think that that's the thing about it, which is what they're putting on display here is
Right.
such a high level of craftsmanship
Artistry.
and artistry,
mean,
right? On all
literally.
the and what they're not putting on display. You're pointing to it exactly, right?
Right.
It's kind of like we have this amazing pianist. Who's literally playing, an incredibly difficult,
Right.
essentially, modern at that point, almost contemporary concerto, like something that had come up and had become a notable concert work.
Yeah.
You have this incredible level of dance. You have the costume. I mean, I keep on both the set and the costuming in the party sequence. Those
Yeah.
those staircases, and
Oh, yeah.
which kind of reminded me of Blazing Saddles.
Oh, the pink staircase?
Yeah, no, well, the big
Oh, they're on
yeah,
stage?
yeah.
I wrote that down too. So when Henri, who's a performer, we should make clear, I wrote down the pink staircase is very cool. And it does remind me of Blazing Saddles, The French Mistake or whatever with
Yeah.
Dom DeLuise.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Mel Brooks, who just turned 100 yesterday,
Yeah.
definitely, is a student of this. And that's
Oh,
why those
yeah.
early Mel Brooks movies are so good because he's not just making fun of stuff, he's recreating it.
Yeah, yeah.
And-
I mean,
and
he's
you
doing
can-
it. He's doing it with so much love, and
Right.
yeah,
But I think my favorite dance number. Well, I said the first dance number for me that worked is the one down by the Seine. That's the first one where I feel like
yeah.
the music's working.
with the kids. That one.
No, I think with the two of them.
Oh, okay.
The one
Okay.
at night. I think it's the scene we're talking about.
Oh,
where
okay.
he's-
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think choppy is like kind of the perfect word because I feel like, and it isn't choppy that like, oh, if I could get in on an Avid and recut this, that wouldn't work. It's like these things
It's-
weren't conceived.
Yeah.
They're conceived in a choppy manner.
Well, it was really like, it was almost like there's a very, very thin story.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is fine.
Which is yeah, but it is a thin story. It's a very kind of simple,
Right.
normal plot, right? And then it's kind of like, well, we need a scene that does that where Gene Kelly can do this, and we need a scene where the pianist can do that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like conceived in that way,
Right.
and it's not the plot is really, and yeah, some cute dialogue. It's like almost like a script doctor punched it up or something. But
Maybe,
like,
yeah, because I wrote down there's a line where he meets Leslie Caron, who I think is like 19 years old. I think this is her
oh
first
my
movie,
gosh,
and she has this great, and it's interesting because she's Gigi and Gigi, same director, 7 years later.
right,
But I love you know, where she says, he's basically stalking her, and that's an old rom-com thing, where like the male behavior just wouldn't fly today. But this
right,
is pretty minor as far as that's concerned. But she says this great line: "It's a pity you don't have as much charm as you do persistence." I thought that
yeah,
was a great line.
yeah.
She's obviously, as this goes on, she's not really much of a character. That's hardly even worth saying. I mean, I don't know
In
that
this movie,
in this
I
movie,
think,
yes,
yeah. I mean, it is worth saying. I mean, she's pretty objectified in this movie.
yeah,
I think it's really worth saying
yeah.
that you have this, you know.
I'm not saying it's not worth saying. It's just that like it's so obvious.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
no, yeah, I get it.
that's what I
But
mean.
it's also like, so I mean, I find the objectification, I found it really frustrating. I mean, in
Okay.
fact, in the beginning when they meet, she basically rejects him and says, "Who are you?" And he like forces her to dance with him basically
Oh
in
yeah,
that
in the club.
in the club,
Yeah.
and it's like
Pulls her away from
pulls
her
her.
friends
Yeah,
or
I mean,
people
like,
she's sitting with.
as if like it is his, essentially his right as a man to dance with whomever he feels. And
Yeah.
I really responded to that. I did not like that.
Yeah. And it's never
And
called out. I mean, she puts up some resistance, but the movie does not call out that behavior as anything.
no, of course
He
not.
doesn't
And
redeem
in
himself from
fact,
that behavior.
it is rewarded because, that's
He gets her.
he gets her.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really do anything to deserve her affection or love other
Mhm.
than be a good dancer. I mean, like, what does he do for her as a character at any point? And yet she falls deeply in love with him,
Yeah.
and that is the story.
Right.
And it's like, and I found that to be,
Yeah.
lame. And
Yeah, and again, to compare it to just a year later, Singing in the Rain, where the Debbie Reynolds character is like, you're a bad actor, you're annoying. Like, he does much more in that to win her over. I'm not saying it's like it's progressive or anything, but at least compared to this,
yeah,
that character is given more agency and much more of a
yeah,
backbone.
yeah, no,
Maybe at Kelly's behest, I mean, because he directs that movie. So
yeah.
maybe this isn't even Gene Kelly's fault. It probably isn't.
Yeah, I mean,
You
I
know?
don't know. I mean, to me, it was, yeah. I mean, I think there was quite a bit of objectification there,
Yeah.
um, and I think that was actually a bummer. But especially when she comes on screen, in that. I'm trying to remember if she came on screen before when
I think
when
he
they.
sees her in the club, like the jazz club he
Well, he
goes to
sees
with
her in the
Milo.
club, but right, but there's that whole sequence when she's like kind of like a fantasy earlier.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
and like she's dancing
Right,
through
you're right. That's the first time we
different
see
styles
her.
of dance,
And
and
I didn't know that was her because I guess I just didn't recognize her until
yeah,
she came back in. You're right. I
right,
think Henri is talking about this girl he's in love with, and
right,
we
right,
see
right.
her, but
We
Gene
see her.
Kelly doesn't see. I mean,
That's right,
yeah. So
and
we, the audience, do see, but I didn't know watching it the first time. I just didn't recognize Leslie Caron because
yeah,
she's such a kid in this.
she's a kid, but a phenomenal dancer,
Absolutely. I didn't even know that
and
was her until.
has so much talent. Really, her movement was, I think,
Yeah.
equally as graceful as Gene Kelly's. I mean, like,
Yeah.
like really gorgeous,
Yeah.
and elegant. And I found that to be, that's what you see. You see this like talent, and it was really being objectified in a way,
Yeah.
like by the filmmakers,
Yeah.
not just.
Yeah, which is upsetting, and it's typical. I think that's what when I said it
Absolutely.
wasn't worth saying, I was saying that like it's typical and it's obvious.
It is.
We definitely should call it out.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think it's but the not to counteract what you just said, at least the movie showcases her dancing ability, and
sure.
it's you can. I'm fine giving myself over to movies like this.
Yeah.
I'm not a logic cop when it comes to this shit. I'm really
No.
not, especially in a movie like this. Because when I sat down to watch it a couple
Well-
days ago, I'm like, okay, I want to just experience this in a way that I probably didn't say about The Last Emperor or Gandhi, where
Yeah.
I needed to be more intellectually keyed into the two best picture movies I hadn't seen.
Well, I mean, really, this is a movie that is trying to sweep you up in spectacle.
Yes.
And I think in many ways it's really successful.
Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And I think that again,
the choppiness we know,
right.
but it's really when you are going into that, like, I want to follow a plot, I want to be narratively stimulated, I want something exciting to happen. But like when you're just like, oh, music, dance, sets, color, costumes, like it's just kind of gorgeous. And
I agree, and I think
weird. It's weird. Gorgeous and weird.
And I think that where this movie falls down, I've been really hard on poor Adam, but he does have one of the line I like where Jerry says, "I got woman troubles," and he says, "That proves you're a man."
Yeah, yeah.
That was a great line.
That was a good line.
Really good line.
Yeah.
Well delivered by him. I don't want like his relatives to come at me. And
but
and I actually think there's another sort of opportunity this movie misses is that there's a scene kind of early on where he meets kind of right after what we're talking about, where Milo gets mad at him. You know, she gets, even though he makes clear that like our arrangement is business, is not romantic. To his credit, I think he's like, I'm nobody's gigolo or anything. I like that about him, that he had some sort of value. He wasn't gonna. He thinks he's being propositioned. She says, "No, I want to support you as an artist," so that's fine. And then he lightens up, but she clearly has feelings for him. Yeah, and I think her hurt, and I think it's a really well acted scene, and they don't, like I think. I would have liked a little more of that. I don't think this to be a love triangle, but I was way more interested in Milo, Jerry. What was Leslie Caron's name? I don't remember.
Lise.
The three of them versus Jerry, Henri, or maybe letting all that breathe and keeping Adam to the piano.
No, I mean, I almost
cutting him out.
I mean, I think that was the more interesting love triangle.
Yeah.
Because you had two kind of you had a Venn diagram of
which I'm just realizing now that I'm saying it out loud. Yeah,
Venn diagram. But like with the Henri was deeply uninteresting as a character to me. So like
he didn't get enough screen time,
right? So like the way I get why you're annoyed at the Adam character, the pianist. I was annoyed by the Henri character because to me, like, very thin character that didn't accomplish anything.
I agree. He didn't annoy me, but he was very thin.
Yeah, and just but his role in the in whether is she single, is she not single, like that, it's actually really critical if the plot that they have is going to make sense.
Yeah.
But it was not the interesting one. The interesting one was that Milo really admired Jerry Mulligan's as an artist in a way that was more mature, because obviously Lisa is a kid, and even in the movie, I mean, she's a very young woman.
Well, I mean, Leslie Caron's 19. I don't think the character's that much older.
Right, the character's not much older.
The character could be 19.
Yeah, no. And Milo's a more established person.
He's been in the war. He's a grown up.
Well, Milo.
Oh, sorry, Milo. I'm sorry. I thought you meant Jerry. No, Milo. Yeah, Milo is more. Yes, is more of an established woman. She has some interesting, the fact that she has this money and she's using it to promote artists.
Right. There's something more sophisticated about her and more interesting.
110%. Yeah.
And it was very. Jerry's choice between the two of them was not interesting. Like there was no push pull there. It was like an obvious, like, he's infatuated with one, and so the fact that the other one has money is never gonna sway him.
Yeah,
and it could have been so much more interesting if it had. You
know?
Like,
what if because Milo clearly loves him as an artist.
Yeah,
you don't get the sense that. Yeah, I think it could. I think like we stumbled onto. I always say I don't want to rewrite someone else's movie, but I think it's interesting because Milo clearly is into Jerry as an artist. She's clearly attracted to him as, he's a good looking guy, but she clearly walks up on the paintings on the street with, when they meet.
That's right.
She believes in him as an artist, and it could have been really interesting. And think about what great music and dance we could have gotten out of this, of like, because Leslie Caron's character, they don't really talk about his art. It's not that she says, "Oh, I hate your art, but I like you," and it's not that neat.
He paints her at one point.
What's that?
He paints her.
Right, but there's no engage. She doesn't engage with his art that we can see. So it might have been interesting if Jerry had a hard time choosing between these two women.
Yeah. I mean, like I did, like, in that when you're in that kind of audience, like,
Sure.
oh, like put yourself in the movie kind
Well,
of
who would you
mentality.
choose?
Like, like to me, that was actually interesting. Like, I was like,
Right.
oh, here's a person, who's, you have, who's, so the fact that she's interested in his art, it shows a level of sophistication and an understanding of the art of creativity,
Right.
and that's
A
like
connection.
that's a real reason to connect to another human being.
Yeah.
Is what their creative output is something that, to me, that's interesting.
And she is really
Maybe that's
beautiful
because
and
I'm an artist,
elegant. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But
but
like, imagine, yeah, it's not, and and she's also really beautiful. She's more. They don't really go near this. She's more age appropriate
that's right.
than Jerry. I
Absolutely.
mean, you get the sense that that woman's 30-ish,
Yeah, and his
maybe.
and his kind of defensiveness around her is because she is age appropriate. Here's a woman who's the correct match
Right.
in a way, and he feels emasculated by her wealth.
Yeah.
And and like, anyway, that's actually interesting, but that wasn't the movie.
That wasn't the
So
movie, and that's fine. I don't need it to be this thing about class and stuff. I
no.
want it to be what it is at its best, which is a spectacle that sweeps you up.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of where he meets her at the perfume store. It's another beautiful set.
Hmm.
That perfume store is just gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
another beautiful set. And this is something I looked up. This is a random thing. The older American woman who's in the perfume store.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is, I didn't write down the actress's name, but I looked it up because I thought I recognized her. That's Anne Harriet from the old Batman show
Oh wow.
from the 60s. I'm like, I know her. I know her. I think her name is Madge Blake. And I think she had, this is random and uninteresting, I think she has my birthday, but like born like 1890 something. So anyway, that's Anne Harriet from the Adam West Batman show. Maybe the most gullible character in all of television, but that's fine. But yeah, there was just so much of this that like I felt like again, like there's a scene kind of toward the end where they're like on the balcony, it's like he's sort of like broken up with her.
Hmm.
And then there's a really great review of like the smoke, and you see that Henri's been listening.
Yeah.
And that was a great piece of direction because it's like that's such an old, maybe this was one of the first ones, like a character overhearing what they need to hear to make a decision is very tired narratively.
Yeah.
It might have been tired 75 years ago, but I thought it was staged so beautifully because
It
that's
was
set.
staged beautifully,
And I think that's where I was like, wow, this is really well directed.
and it was a good reveal.
It's a good reveal.
Yeah.
That set is beautiful of them on the balcony.
And
I'm glad I knew these were sets instead of thinking. I mean, I think in a few cases I would have known, oh, that's a matte painting. But I'm glad I knew these were sets when I sat down to watch it because I feel like I was able to appreciate them more
as sets, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was. I mean, it was. Again, the craft here was, and watching that scene, particularly in that fantastical costume that he was wearing
Yeah.
at the party,
Yeah.
which again kind of like highlighted his physique in interesting ways, and like
Yeah.
he's such Gene Kelly is such a presence in that moment.
Sure.
And it was, so that whole breakup sequence was fascinating, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was something interesting about that because like they're in this big party where everybody's wearing these crazy costumes,
Right.
really crazy costumes. And like if you go back and watch it again, like just that sequence, and like look at some of the extras and some of the costumes, like
Yeah.
I was paying attention to that, and it was just like,
No, there's a lot
was-
to look at in this.
it
Like
was it was wild.
yeah, like it's staged really well, and there's always something to look at in this.
and there was no like laziness, like
No.
like every and I don't know how many people were in that party sequence. It felt like
It looked like
many.
hundreds.
Looked like hundreds.
Well,
right?
that's the thing. Like, I think my frustration with this movie is
And
narrative.
Yeah, and all of them had incredible costumes.
Yeah,
every
that's the
one of them.
thing. Like, there's nothing lazy about this movie in terms of
Craft.
how it's executed or staged. I think the laziness, and not even laziness, I think like where this movie falls down is narratively.
Yeah.
And I think, I guess 2 or 3 of the performances, but it's really character deep. I mean, maybe if Donald O'Connor had played Adam, but he's not a musician like that.
Right.
I just feel like
No,
that could have been lifted out, and you wouldn't have needed it. You could also argue you could lift out the whole Henri thing and the I don't know, maybe you would lose too much there.
Yeah.
But let's get to the thing I think both of us really want to get to, which is the ballet sequence, which
Yeah.
is about 20 minutes, maybe a little shy under.
Yeah.
And it's wordless, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. This is my favorite thing in the movie.
Okay.
As far as just the numbers, this was the thing I felt.
It was certainly the greatest spectacle of the movie.
That's maybe what I'm saying. I felt that this was where the movie, because it was just
Leslie Caron has something like, I mean, I didn't count it, but it feels like maybe like 8 to 9 million costume changes in this one sequence. It's insane.
And I feel like this is something, I guess, I think I knew this about this movie. This is one of the few things that I knew that, like, oh, there's this ballet sequence in it. I don't think I knew how long it was.
Yeah.
Because I did some of the research before I sat down to watch it, which sometimes I do. But yeah, I felt that this is where the movie really kind of just slapped hardest for me. As far as and again, it wasn't, for all the complaining I'm doing about it, this wasn't a hard thing to get through. It moves at a good clip. I was never bored.
No,
I was frustrated by some things. I was never like, and we're going to talk about one at the end of the show. There was one movie that's nominated this year that was such a fucking bore. But it's not this one.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just thought that was, I mean, clearly that's where this movie's heart was. That's like where Minnelli and Gene Kelly, and maybe, that's like where
they were headed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like they built a movie to do that, right?
Which is how I feel about this whole movie. I feel like it's almost like, there's certain action directors who are really great at sequences and really bad at telling a story.
Yeah.
And they just string together a movie to get to the sequences.
Yep.
This movie, unlike Singing in the Rain, feels that way to me.
I agree. Yeah.
If these were cars blowing up and like car chases, or like, or even like you could say that about maybe some Mission Impossible movies, how it's just a clothesline to hang Tom Cruise doing stunts on. I don't, that this feels like that to me. It's like, I want to do this 20-minute ballet sequence. I want to do this dance here.
It is about the bravado and the swagger of the technical kind of elements of the film, right? Or the craft elements of the film.
Yeah.
And not, it is filmmakers saying, look at what we can do, look at what we can put on screen.
Right.
And not saying, look at this story that's gonna, actually, move your heart.
Yeah. It's not firing on all cylinders, but on the cylinders it is firing on, it's great.
Right.
Like this is like premier musical filmmaking in these moments that do work.
Yeah.
As opposed to Singing in the Rain, where, to me, I won't put words in your mouth, the whole thing works. Meaning that's firing on all cylinders for me, as far as like everything working.
I think Singing in the Rain is a superior film. I agree. And, I think here, in this one, though, all these elements, I struggle with it because they really are impressive.
Yeah.
And in ways, these are some of these crafts, like I was saying, like feel like they're crafts that we have, I don't want to say abandoned, but like minimized, right? Like we're not, we're not thinking about it in the same way now because we're thinking about CG. We're thinking about, we're thinking about different elements in terms of like what we can put on screen.
Right.
But the kinds of elements that they were putting on screen then, were stunning.
Yeah.
And in a way, I looked at it kind of nostalgically at times, and I was like, we've lost some of these things because they're seen as passé, or like we have better technology to make something more realistic.
Yeah.
But when it wasn't realistic, I was really enjoying it.
Yeah, that's why I think I've sort of dug in so much to the sets in this, the fact that they're not unrealistic, but they're not. Realism wasn't the focus in building these sets.
No.
It was,
they're dreamy.
They're dreamy, and I think the balance there is just right. All right, it's time to move on to Categorically Denied. Before we get to Best Picture, let's see if An American in Paris was worthy of the other 5 Oscars it won. Okay, so it wins Best Adapted Screenplay. It beats The Big Carnival, David and Bathsheba, Go for Broke, and The Well. So if you've seen any of those, if you remember any of those, what do you think?
I have not, so I'm gonna defer this one to you.
So I'm gonna pick without hesitation The Big Carnival, and it's going to come back up. Very interesting thing, even in the very title of this movie. We're going to get back to that. But no contest, The Big Carnival deserves Best Adapted Screenplay. Best Cinematography, Color. It beats David and Bathsheba, Quo Vadis, Showboat, and When Worlds Collide. What say you?
So I didn't see those, but I mean, this was which category were we in?
This is cinematography, color.
Oh, cinematography. In color. I thought it was strong in its ways. Like I thought all the technical and craft elements were strong in this movie. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes. I've only seen Quo Vadis, and I think that Quo Vadis is an interesting comparison. And Quo Vadis is up for Best Picture, so we'll talk about it more in a second. Quo Vadis, I think, is it's a biblical epic. It's in color. I think that it's got kind of a flat look in a lot of ways, and it looks more stagey in a bad way than this movie.
Yeah.
There's a couple images in that movie that are really strong, but I think just comparing it to that, I think this is worlds better. So yeah, this is an easy one for me. Definitely should keep it cinematography Oscar. We talked about this a lot. Best costume design, it beats David and Bathsheba, The Great Caruso, Quo Vadis, Tales of Hoffman. What are these movies that you've seen that you remember?
I have not seen them, but how does anything beat that how does anything beat that party scene?
It doesn't. I've seen Quo Vadis, and again, perfectly good costumes, biblical stuff, sword and sandals. But yeah, this movie is costumed within an inch of its life, and it's beautiful.
And like you said really nicely earlier, was that the costumes for Gene Kelly allowed him the movement.
Yeah.
And that's that's some real skill.
And they're really hugged to his body.
Yeah,
they don't look that way. He's not in like in baggy clothes.
No.
Like, you see every contour of his body.
And give him movement and grace. I mean, it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
And then when you get to these large sequences in the ballet at the end, I mean, the costuming is just it's outrageous.
Yeah. It's an orgy of good costume design.
And another thing is that I keep on thinking, even though the ballet as well, but I keep on thinking about that party sequence just because, that was really atypical. It was, I mean, again, the costumes were a little weird. Like they weren't these were not, these didn't feel like what people would actually wear to a costume party. It felt like some kind of like fantastical kind of version on crack, that was,
which I love.
Yeah. I mean, like this was some of the, again, that feeling, I keep on calling it psychedelic because I don't have a better, I wish I had a better cultural, like
it's not
historical
realistic.
Reference.
It's not realistic. Yeah. I mean, somebody who knows more about fashion than the two of us could probably point to, oh, this is XYZ. This is a particular thing. Because like with fashion, and I'm the last guy to talk about fashion, but I'm sure this has been thrown back to 2 or 3 times in the last 75 years.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the clothes that people wear or like a Paris runway show. So I think that I've yet to talk to a costume designer on this show.
Yeah.
I'm sure a costume designer could tell me in greater detail, like you can with music, like this is this style, and we've gone back to this 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the last 7.5 decades.
Yeah.
But just as layman, it just looks great.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Which brings us right to Best Art Direction. It beats David and Bathsheba, On the Riviera, Tales of Hoffman, and Quo Vadis.
Again, you keep on naming the movies I didn't see.
No, I haven't seen most of these. I have seen Quo Vadis, but these movies are very obscure.
I mean, the art direction, again, I mean, like we keep on talking about it, every element on this in this movie, visual element in this movie is incredibly strong.
Yeah, I agree. I think the sets, I don't always talk about production design when we talk about these movies, not because it's not good or bad, but I think that, this is such a production designed movie in a good way.
Yeah.
I compared it to Rear Window, which I think is an interesting comparison, because it's artificial in a way that I find very appealing.
Well, even like, think about a set. By the way, a great set is just that opening apartment, that, Jerry Mulligan's apartment, where he's able to construct this elaborate dance and at the same time show that he's a starving artist because he's in this...
It feels confined.
He's in this confined area, with all the things he has to do with his bed to kind of hide his bed and set up his studio and all these kind of like, I mean, this is a really inventive set. This is tremendous.
Yeah, I think, there's not one set in this movie that isn't terrific. Last thing before we get to Best Picture is Best Score. So it beats Alice in Wonderland, The Great Caruso, On the Riviera. Oh, those are the musicals.
These are
okay. So sorry. So best musicals. So best score, and this is from other musicals so we still have 2 score awards. So it beats Alice in Wonderland, The Great Caruso, On the Riviera, and Showboat.
So I'm not taking a stand, but it is a jukebox musical,
Right.
and so I'm not going to say like which of um, I, I have a bit of an issue with it
Right.
in general, right?
Okay.
It is, but similarly, John Williams won for his first Oscar was Fiddler on the Roof, which is not his music.
Right.
And
That was an
it's
adapted. We used to have an adapted
and
music
so
category.
kind of a similar.
Right.
This is a similar thing. So is it best score? Yes. Was there original music in here? Yes. That was designed to thread the Gershwin together and to make use of the Gershwin themes um, but I think that it's and I say this as someone who has done work in both of these worlds.
Right.
I've worked as an arranger, I've worked with other people's themes, and I've worked with my own themes. It's a different job. I mean, they're great. They're both very important, valid, wonderful musical expressions, but they are different.
Right.
And so, like, I really wonder, But look, the best score category historically is troubling. I think it's not some years something comes through and they really do reward something that is either it's the same push pull in the pictures, either something that is really new and inventive and has something original to say, or something that is such a great expression of what we know, in a way, such a incredible expression that's usually the same kind of push pull, right? But the score categories is kind of haunted because it's very often just goes with like the Academy votes. They check down the boxes, and it's like, okay, well, if it's the best directed, if it's the best edited, if it's the best screenplay, then it must have also had the best music.
They vote down ballot,
and so it's that. So I'm always I've become a little bit more skeptical of Academy Awards over the years, and if anybody from the Academy is listening, please disregard that. Thank you.
Well, that's what this show is about. It's about being skeptical. Well, I mean, this year, I'm
not saying I don't want one. No. In theory.
Well, they for Reese's Passing Understanding, because the movie was so heavily nominated, they excluded the Marty Supreme score, which I thought was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And why did that I'm asking rhetorically, why did that not get nominated when the movie was nominated for picture, director, and actor, and all these things?
Yeah.
It's not like the movie itself was snubbed, in which case I can understand it. But it got something like 8 nominations, and it was excluded for something that if the movie had bombed, the score might have gotten nominated anyway. Just because it was so strong. I thought.
Yeah.
Speaking for myself.
Yeah.
All right. So Ronen, is this movie ready for exhibition? It's time to test our hindsight with the verdict against Decision Before Dawn, A Place in the Sun, Quo Vadis, and A Streetcar Named Desire. Was An American in Paris the best movie nominated this year? So just of these 5.
Was it the best movie? So we're asking if it deserved the best picture.
Right, but only against these 4 other movies.
Against these 4 other movies. So, God, do I really have to say? I think it's I'm still struggling with this.
Okay, let's talk. Tell me the struggle.
And it is that struggle. It is the struggle of what you talked about earlier about like, what is the purpose of an Academy Award? Is the Academy Award about helping bring film to the masses and is it a vehicle for, like what's the best picture to represent cinema? Or is it about the best artistic expression, the best, the one that makes you feel and think and do something, it is the La La Land Moonlight thing. It's not different. In fact, I think that's really good.
So what's
specifically?
So is this La La Land because it's a musical, and what's
this is La La Land? It's a spectacle.
Okay.
It's impressive.
Right.
It is something that you can't see on television in 1951.
Right.
It is beautiful. It has layers of artistic talent that are stunning, I think. Really, from the craft all the way through. I don't know about the dramatic acting, which I think, is okay, but like certainly the dance and the kind of performance, the theatrical performance of it in a way is of the actors is really really lovely, um, and um, this is an impressive feat. I think the ballet sequence at the end. I feel like we should talk more about the ballet. I
Yeah,
mean
we can talk more about it.
the ballet is unbelievable. I mean, that's an incredibly hard thing to do, to stage, to film, to edit, to put that together
And I
was
think stands on its own. It's worth saying, I don't think you need to sit through the hour and 45 minutes that come before this to appreciate the ballet. It might
right.
actually be more impressive on its own.
I think you make a good point.
I don't think you
really
need
do.
it's not like you need to know who these characters
You
are.
really
You have a
don't.
man and a
No,
woman.
no.
I hate
Yeah.
to be reductive, but that's all you need.
That's pretty much for the ballet. That is pretty much. But
In this case, I'm not saying all ballet.
But is it also the most impressive thing of the movies that I saw? Was it the most impressive thing filmed and the most, I mean, so does that make it the best picture? That's why I'm struggling.
Well, let's talk about it.
Because it's a feat. It's really a feat.
Let's attack it this way then. Let's attack it this way. This is interesting. So, all these 5 movies, which ones have you seen? Because I could talk about all 5.
So I saw 3. I saw American in Paris. I rewatched A Streetcar Named Desire and A Place in the Sun.
Okay, so let's do this. We're
Yeah.
going to do this a slightly different way.
Yeah.
This is a hindsighting first. I'm going to talk about.
Look, the answer is no. It's not the best picture.
I agree. The answer is no for me too.
Yeah.
And I think listening to our conversation, it's clearly that the answer is no for me. I want to talk about these 5 movies though, but I want to talk about. So for me, this is an interesting mix. So the answer is no. It's just a question of which one we're going to give it to.
Yeah.
Or once.
Yeah.
For me, this is a fascinating mix of. I think there are 3 great movies here. I think there was one really, really interesting one, which is the one we just spent an hour and a half talking about, American in Paris.
Yeah.
And I think there's one that is absolute fucking dog shit, and that's Quo Vadis.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about Quo Vadis first.
Okay.
And get it out of the way.
Yeah.
So Quo Vadis, like an American in Paris, is a spectacle. Is a color spectacle, something you can't see on TV. And we've got a lot of these this decade. I mean, the Best Picture winner of 1959 is Ben-Hur.
Right.
Year after that, we get Spartacus. We have The Robe coming up in 53, which is nominated for Best Picture, which I have not seen yet. So sword and sandals epics are a big thing this decade, as big as musicals and westerns and everything else that's going on. Quo Vadis, at least as far as the Academy Awards in the 50s, is the first one.
Yeah.
And Peter Ustinov is even in it. And it is just under 3 hours. It is boring. It has actors I like Peter Ustinov and Deborah Kerr, who's all over this decade. She's in the Best Picture winner, terrific actor. It's the worst kind of Christianity propaganda. And most of these sword and sandals epics are very Christian, which I have no problem with. But, I mean, this is just propaganda.
Right.
And I'd say the same thing if it were Jewish propaganda. It's not the religion I'm attacking. It's that it's done so artlessly.
Yeah.
And this movie's it's just fucking boring. There are a few sets that are beautiful. There's a couple images. There's a scene late in the movie where there's kind of a slave revolt, and there's a couple shots where you're like, oh, okay, this you see they're gonna do better with this later on. With this type of movie. Quo Vadis is just boring and goes on forever. And it's just terrible.
I did listen to the Quo Vadis score.
Yeah.
And spent some time listening to the score because it was nominated. I wanted to listen to all the dramatic scores.
Yes.
Yeah, the score tracks everything you're saying. It felt I mean, Miklos Rosa is a legend. So this is so I'm not, but in this case it felt I don't know how to. It felt painted on. It felt. It was exactly what you're.
They didn't give him a good movie to score. I mean, I don't see how any composer and Miklos Rosa is one of the best. It's also we should talk about, at this era of filmmaking of movies, scores, it's wall-to-wall music. I mean, American in Paris is different because it's a musical, but as far as a dramatic movie, like we're going to talk to, probably if the movie's 2 hours, it's probably 90 minutes of score.
There's a lot of music.
There's a tonnage and volume of music is wall-to-wall. That's how movies are being made, and it's that way all through this decade, whether you like the music or not. So we can scratch Quo Vadis off the list because it's fucking terrible.
Okay, it's terrible.
And I'd say it's the worst Best Picture nominee I've had to sit through, except I've already watched ahead to something that comes out in 1952.
Okay.
And I won't spoil it, but there is a arguably worse movie, but it is an hour shorter. So, so little tease for 1952 coming up. Okay, so we know how I feel about American in Paris. We now know how I feel about Quo Vadis. So, we have 3 movies now that I think are really great. 2 I had seen before, 1 I had never seen before.
And you mentioned, I know you mentioned it to me, and I didn't get to watch it.
It's fine. Well, let's talk about. I mean, how do you want to attack this?
I want to hear the one that I know nothing about.
I knew nothing about it either. So there's a movie called Decision Before Dawn that I never even heard of. It's nominated for Best Picture and I think Best Editing or something, or Best Screenplay. And that's it. It only gets 2 Oscar nominations. So it's not
so interesting.
It's not as heavily nominated as any of these other 4 movies.
Yeah.
Quo Vadis, I think, is, I don't know the exact, but Streetcar, Place in the Sun, and American in Paris have like 8 to 10 to 12 nominations, or just heavy hitters going into awards. And you saw from my research that I guess the thinking going into Oscar night is that this was Place in the Sun versus Streetcar, and then American in Paris was kind of a surprise.
Right.
So it wasn't even a La La Land Moonlight thing. It was another movie coming in.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I think going into that Oscar night, La La Land was the favorite.
La La Land was the favorite. Yeah.
Despite the envelope, it wasn't like a shock that it won.
I think I was only talking about it in terms of like, is it a gritty drama that's teaching us about culture and society versus like something that feels like a grand spectacle.
Right. So Decision Before Dawn was the biggest surprise here, and it might be up to this point the most obscure Best Picture nominee because I never heard about it. I didn't even know it as a Best Picture nominee. I'm sure I've read the list and seen it, but it went in one ear and out the other. So this is a really cool movie. So this was shot obviously 6 years after the war ended, and it's shot in like still bombed out locations all over Germany, in Europe, other parts of Europe. And it's about this event in World War II that I just didn't know anything about. So it's about 2 Nazi soldiers who are, captured by the Americans. So they're POWs. And the Americans basically make them double agents, like insert them back into, so that they can report back to them.
It's pretty cool.
Something I didn't even know it happened. I didn't even know that this was a thing that happened. And it's German actors. And what's interesting is you see a lot of them saying, well, I hooked up with Hitler because I didn't want to be killed. I never believed in any of this, or I regret doing it. Like you see, it's not an apologia for the Nazis, but you do see that there were people who were swept up in that who...
Was an apologia for the German people or something like that?
No, I don't think it doesn't have... What I love about the movie is that it doesn't have a political bent to it. It doesn't have an ideological bent to it. It is a thriller. It is an espionage thriller. And it's really gritty because it is like they're in these locations and they stick for the most part with this one German soldier, and they give him fake papers and everything. And we've seen so many movies, particularly in this time, about an American, reporting on the Nazis, like Notorious, like the Ingrid Bergman character. It's right after the war. That's just like one example. We've seen the inverse of this so many times. And again, I didn't even know that this was like a true thing. And the movie opens like all these movies do with like a prologue. It's just like, this really happened and we're shooting in the same locations. And so it's got a real like almost documentary feel to it because like they're walking through these bombed out cities. And again, the war's like barely over. So these places have not been rebuilt. And it's a really taut thriller. And it taught me something about a subject that I thought I knew a lot about. And it was so far the best discovery I've had working on this show.
That's so cool.
Meaning that like I would have never watched this movie. I would have never even known about it. No one's ever said, "Oh, Ed, you got to check this out." So, Decision Before Dawn is something everybody should see, whether or not you think it's the best movie of these 5. It just threw such, and I think maybe I saw it after Quo Vadis. I keep shitting on Quo Vadis, but like those are like the two extremes of something that like was a surprise and was like fascinating, and Quo Vadis was just absolute homework and boring. And but Quo Vadis isn't even bad; it's just boring.
Yeah.
Like nothing. I mean, you could like watch a scene of it and be like, "Oh, this might be a good movie if I gave it the time." Don't. So, Decision Before Dawn is just something everybody should check out, even if you
Okay.
watch it and think like, "Oh, Streetcar's better, Place in the Sun is better." Now, Place in the Sun, I remember I watched it when I was like a teenager, but I didn't remember it. And I don't say
Yeah.
that to throw shade on it. I just didn't really remember
You've
it.
seen a lot of movies
I've
since
seen a
then.
lot of movies, but like Streetcar, I've read the play. Streetcar is definitely the most famous of these 5 movies in terms of like it's a famous
I mean,
play.
it is still the most famous, right?
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's the most famous now. Like
Yeah.
pop culturally,
Yeah, absolutely.
people maybe they read the play in high school. It's just visually the image of Brando with his short shorn. I mean, like it's for something that was a famous play, it is as famous a movie, arguably more. But sticking with A Place in the Sun, so when I watched it, I didn't remember a lot of it, and I wonder if Place in the Sun deserves more of a reputation than it has. I don't know how like remembered it is. I mean, it's got 2 famous people in it, but I think A Place in the Sun was really good. I think it's really,
good
really
movie.
dark.
So dark.
For 1951?
It felt really, really dark and approaching these and I kind of like I did a little research on it and it was based on a book or something but that was based on real life events
Right.
from earlier in the 20th century.
Mhm.
I think from like the teens maybe or maybe the aughts in the I'm sorry, in the 20th century. It was but this was a dark and it it kind of reminded me of like that kind of uh what do we call it, like that sensational news story around the Lacey Peterson and like some of these
Yeah.
so the things that have happened more recently. It was
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
and it was an incredibly dark tale and then ended up being really an interesting kind of moral and ethical question of innocence and guilt and where true innocence lies and where true guilt lies. And
really good Montgomery Clift performance.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I mean, he's somebody who's there's so many sort of tragic stories with these, Marilyn Monroe being the most. I mean, I argued in the last episode because Marilyn Monroe has a small part in All About Eve. I'd argue she's probably the image of the 50s that people know, like her with the subway grate and everything. Not reducing her to that, but Montgomery Clift is another person who is in a lot of these at least early 50s movies who meets with a similarly tragic end, who dies relatively young. He's ends, this is 2 of 3 years in a row where we have Elizabeth Taylor in a Best Picture nominee, and Elizabeth Taylor's another iconic.
You have to talk about Elizabeth Taylor in this movie. I mean, she is stunning,
right? And she's the prize in this movie.
And just to see what how and I think it was actually comparing it to An American in Paris is interesting because like you have these female characters who are prizes, right?
Yeah, great comparison.
But Elizabeth Taylor, I mean, she's gorgeous,
right? But she's actually given more. But they make her
something.
more of a person in this.
That's right.
I mean, it's not about her, and you could argue,
but what she comes in the final scenes there, I mean, that's like that's meaty. That's something that you're going to be thinking about for forever. Is the love that she had?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that was.
And they were very close.
Her profession of love at the end is so, it's heartbreaking, and I mean, it's a really it's a meaty character and a meaty relationship, and you're left really thinking, in this one.
Yeah, and I think it's instructive that George Stevens beats Minnelli for the Best Director Oscar. We typically don't talk about it in this direction because Minnelli didn't win, but it's interesting that he beats Minnelli and Elia Kazan for Streetcar.
Yeah.
I'm not weighing in on the totality of that race, but it's interesting that, but yeah, I think A Place in the Sun, and Shelley Winters is also fantastic
Yes.
in that movie.
Yeah.
And a real, you know,
Yes. I mean, the whole her in the boat sequence, the
yeah,
way she can kind of uh kind of represent anxiety
yeah.
and these internal monologues that consume us, but it's externalized in a way. But like, it was very compelling performance.
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, just talking about the totality of this year. It's like we're talking about Quo Vadis and An American in Paris, which are spectacle. You know,
Yeah.
they're both going for. I mean, they're in
Yeah,
color. It's not incidental that Place in the Sun is in black and white,
that's right.
and you could see, you know, they could have done that movie in color. I'm not saying it would have been better or worse, but they could have done that movie in color. You know, you got two beautiful
Yeah.
leads, and I think the decision when a movie's in black and white versus when a movie's in color at this point is a decision. Whereas
Yeah.
now, to make a movie in black and white, and it's been this way for decades, is a decision.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
so I think it's interesting. I don't want to reduce it to just color versus black and white, be that sort of binary with it. But I think there's a certain kind of like A Place in the Sun is very elegant, but there's like a grit to it, even though
I mean, yeah, and I
'cause
think
it's about
I
class.
think it is, and I think in the Montgomery Clift character,
Yeah,
the way he broods and some of these shots of him
Yeah.
that are these close ups, and you get this really tortured
yeah,
internal life, which I think is also something that you get in Streetcar and
and James Dean's
and
coming a couple years later.
yeah, I
This is
mean,
the beginning of this. We did not have brooding leading men
That's right.
in the 40s or any
Yeah.
time before that. This is the start. It's another thing we really haven't talked. It didn't really apply to All About Eve because that's a woman's movie
And-
in a good way.
And I think like, this is something maybe to consider in like a post-war context, like historically, you have all these, who is the audience? These are people who have just, suffered this trauma of war. These look like, they were probably overseas a few years earlier.
I think his
And-
character was in the
and-
war, wasn't he? Or you could the character that Cliff plays. Did they say?
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
I-
I actually
you-
don't remember.
I
but-
think you would have to assume
I
because
mean,
he's like
but-
30 years old or younger. He
But just-
probably was in the service in some capacity.
I'm wondering if there was like was the movie
Set in the modern day.
set in the modern day. That was,
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
You
so
might-
that's my question.
Oh, okay, well,
But
scratch that.
regardless, I mean, I think you have this class of actors like you're talking about that's coming in and they're traumatized, right? And so you have this trauma on being reflected in a way, and the opposite in American in Paris is this escapism, right? You have escapism, and
Jerry
and
Mulligan's also a war veteran. It's the
He
same,
is.
you know.
he is, but that's not.
No, I know. I'm just saying it's
Yeah.
interesting that like the war, even in a very superficial way,
Sure, yeah, like
is in the conversation.
the
He
war
says,
is
like I was here,
absolutely there.
I was stationed here in Paris. I stayed on.
right.
That's all you get.
Yeah, that's all you get from Jerry Mulligan. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But then the movie itself is this escapist fantasy.
Completely.
And and here in these dramas, you're getting something. I mean, you're getting something that is internal and traumatized. And
Right.
I mean, this one is really, really interesting. Thinking about it in terms of like soldiers coming home from war where they saw and participated in
Yeah.
things that were, unsavory, because that's what war is.
Yeah.
And even if they were on the right side, and here you have a character who does not commit murder.
Right.
Right? He doesn't commit murder.
But he considers it.
But he considers it.
Yeah.
He considers it, and he is ultimately executed for it.
Right.
And
It's really dark.
I mean, this is really dark.
Yeah.
But he doesn't commit murder.
Right.
And so I find that, when you think about that in the context of like, who's watching this and like how are they processing their own experience, these own kind of like morally gray experiences.
Yeah.
A Place in the Sun is fascinating.
Yeah, and let's get to our last one, A Streetcar Named Desire. And I think that this is something I probably was the most familiar with of these five. I mean, I definitely was.
Me too, yeah.
I've seen this movie a few times. I think I read the play in high school or maybe college. I went through a kind of a brief Tennessee Williams thing where I was really into him when I was in college. Not that I'm not into him. I just don't read a lot of plays. But I really forgot, though. I hadn't seen it in a long time just how powerful this is. And Elia Kazan, who directed the Broadway production, really does an incredible job making this place seem cinematic, but without being absurd about it. Like he opens it up just enough and he shoots it in a really lush way, but he doesn't, he doesn't undercut what was so great about the play, I would imagine. And you know, I think this is probably Marlon Brando's best performance. I think that this is, at least in a movie, and I think that this is one of those, it's easy to think about Brando. I love Superman. I really think like Superman or Apocalypse Now, which are movies I like. It's easy to think about Paycheck Brando or even like Island of Dr. Moreau, like absurd Paycheck Brando. This is what I would show someone if someone says like, "What's the big deal about Marlon Brando?" This is what I would show them because he's so frighteningly dialed in to this performance. He's so like just terrifying in this movie.
He is terrifying.
Yeah.
He is, and it is that thing, right? You have that same thing, like I was saying about Gene Kelly, like, or any of these actresses we've been titled, Elizabeth Taylor, he's beautiful to look at on screen.
Yeah.
He's,
and no one else looked like him. This is the start of like, I mean, Brando, because he's about the same age as Cliff, like Brando is, he played this part on stage for years, about 4 years earlier.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So he originated this part. So, and I believe Kim Hunter and Carl Malden also played it on stage, but Jessica Tandy played Blanche, and then Vivian Lee, I think because they wanted like a bigger name actress. Yeah. I would be fascinated to see Jessica Tandy in this part, but Vivian Lee's incredible in this movie. The whole cast is. But yeah, this is, it's interesting because this is one of those movies. Quick stat here is that Vivian Lee, Kim Hunter, and Carl Malden all win Oscars, and there's only 2 other movies where a movie's won 3 of the 4 acting Oscars. The other one is Network, and the other one is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Okay. No movies. It's only happened 3 times in 98 years.
Wow.
No movies ever won all 4. This would have been the one. Yeah. Because Brando does not win. He loses to Humphrey Bogart and African Queen, who is very good, but that's clearly kind of a makeup thing for, I'd say, even the year before.
Sure.
In A Lonely Place. But yeah, the whole cast is good, but like Brando, yeah, it's just.
And that's the thing, and it's that duality of it. He's like it cuts such an incredible, figure of beauty, really.
Yeah.
In a real kind of like classical sense,
right.
And then he's a monster.
Yeah.
He is absolutely terrifying, and in everything he does, in the way he can have a conversation and then throw the cup against the wall.
He's an
or
animal.
whatever. He's an animal, and then or in the cruelty of the bus ticket, like I got you a gift. That in the way he delivers that, like the performance is just and almost, I would say, this is the best picture just because of him.
Yeah.
And it's almost, it's that powerful. And this is also probably my favorite score of the bunch. So,
mine too.
And it's,
the score is fantastic.
And even putting Alex North aside, I think maybe, it's, I don't know that I'm still kind of shaken by it, and I just rewatched, and I had seen it before too.
Yeah, we've all seen it.
But I haven't seen it. I think I hadn't watched it since college, and I also read the play.
Probably for me too. It's been a long time for me.
So it had been decades since I'd watched it, and I'm still shaking. It's incredible.
Yeah, and we got to talk about
powerful.
Vivian Lee, because I wrote in my Letterboxd review that I talk a lot about how I'm not making a 1-to-1 comparison, but like Harrison Ford played Han Solo in Indiana Jones, and Al Pacino played Michael Corleone and Tony Montana, and she played Scarlett O'Hara and Blanche Dubois. Yeah. And I think there's such a fascinating continuity if you just look at those 2 women.
Yeah.
Not that it's the same character, but, because obviously it's different time periods and everything, but I just think that's such a fascinating, we never really talk about even our greatest actresses as far as like iconic roles, because like even like someone like Meryl Streep, who's, we all can agree is probably still our best, female actor or like in the top 3 or whatever,
Sure. If not,
but we never talk about the iconic Meryl Streep roles. At least I don't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe oddly in the last 20 years, maybe Miranda Priestley is one of them, because that's a role that, that she's very sort of
Famous for?
identified with
Yeah.
that. But that's not one of her 2 or 3 best performances, as good as she did in that. But
Yeah.
but Vivian Lee, and this isn't a stat, to my thinking, is the only woman I could think of that has 2 just roles
Yeah.
that are iconic. Like Scarlett O'Hara and Blanche Dubois are just
Too
characters,
iconic.
like all those other, like Indy and Tony Montana and Michael Corleone and Han Solo, that are just roles that people know. You may not have ever seen Streetcar, but if you say Scarlett O'Hara, you're like, oh wait, yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah.
If you say Blanche Dubois, I mean Blanche Dubois maybe even more than Scarlett O'Hara, because it's just like a Blanche Dubois is like a type, like we know what. Oh, that woman's like a Blanche Dubois. I mean, it's a little bit reductive.
That is reductive.
But you know what I'm saying. If I say she's like Blanche
I mean,
Dubois, you know what I'm saying.
But I think Tennessee Williams, kind of, he caught onto something there, and he's, it also feels like this, and I believe the play was premiered not long before the film was made, right? So
play was in like 1947. This is
so also
this is
just like
quick,
yeah,
and
just
ran
and right after, and also right after the war. So like, I mean, I'm just seeing, I see the trauma of World War II kind of coursing through these films.
Yeah. So Brando, when he does this play, is 23. He's 27 here. So he's even younger in the So he's 27 years old. He was in one other movie called The Men the year before. So he left the play, and then when they put the movie together, it's interesting. I think Vivian Lee's in it to get, and she's amazing in it, as I've just said. I think to get a bigger movie star in, but they were smart enough to not recast Marlon Brando. They were smart enough to look at this property and be like, this kid's got to be in it, and he will become famous after it, and that's exactly what happened.
It's so it's so stunning, and really, look, all the performances in the movie are great,
absolutely,
and Elia Kazan, and like, I mean, I think the direction is great. I think the use of shadow and
really well shot.
It's
beautifully shot.
It's just so, the dark and the light of it is so, and there's of course the famous sequence where the Mitch character is, I've never seen you in the light, and and then holds her into the light, and that whole moment. So but the way, the way everything feels like it's in the shadows, the way all our domestic relationships are kind of like, I mean, this is a play, and so to think of it cinematically in those terms, I think it's incredibly stunning.
Yeah. So as far as the verdict, I mean, this is tough. Definitely not Quo Vadis. Definitely not American in Paris. I gotta cut. Yeah, I won't make you come down on something. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm as good as Place in the Sun is, I think I like Streetcar a little more, splitting hairs a little bit.
I know.
Place in the Sun, we both waxed, rhapsodic about it. I think it's definitely something you should check out. I think Decision Before Dawn I really loved. I'd like to see it again. I think I'm gonna go Streetcar just because I've had the most time with it. But you know what? I'm gonna tie. I'm gonna say Streetcar and Decision Before Dawn, and I'll give myself an alternate. I don't know. This is hard. This is really hard because I really love Decision Before Dawn, but I've just seen it one time.
Yep.
So I'd love to visit it again. I just didn't have time to do that before. Let's go to the appeal. Was there any movie that you liked? What was the best movie of 1951, nominated or not, or have we already discussed it?
Well, I mean, I have, those are the movies that I feel most comfortable talking about, the ones that we've discussed.
Okay, so you liked either Streetcar or Place in the Sun. Is one of those two is your favorite, or
or
something else?
And this is tough. I have to say this is tough. And
you can use more than one.
And I'm not even like, and I'll tell you that like, that I loved An American in Paris as much as we have dissected it. It's I love Gershwin as a composer. Like, how can I not?
Yeah.
So
you have an into this that I don't.
So I have. So there's something so joyful about that. There's something so joyful about the dance, and sometimes I'm like, a little joy isn't so bad.
It's not.
But at the end of the day, I consider myself maybe a better artist than I am a craftsman. I think that's maybe, my own my own point of view on my own life, and so I have to give it to to Streetcar Named Desire.
Okay.
I was going to bring up Death of a Salesman because I'm thinking of the score again, and Alex North was nominated for both of these.
We'll get to that.
These movies.
We'll get to that.
So, but I think I think when you bring it all together, and the just how much undertone Streetcar Named Desire was able to convey,
Yeah.
and really kind of expose our psychology and expose our relationships and expose our society,
Yeah.
In this intimate fashion. I think there's a reason it's the most famous of the bunch, even though it didn't win. I think there's a reason for it.
Yeah, and time renders. I mean, that's the theme of this show. Renders an ultimate verdict. I think it's fascinating to close out this part of the show. There's 3 movies that I really, really, really enjoyed and really love talking about, and American in Paris is pretty good. It was fun. I liked seeing it, and so there's only one movie in here that I think is worthless, which I've talked enough about.
Wait, which one?
Quo Vadis. Quo Vadis is bad. So as much as I've liked all these movies that we've talked about, my favorite movie of the year in a walk is Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train.
Okay.
So after 2 very noble misfires, Hitchcock announces that he's going to rule this decade, and he starts the biggest run of his most famous movies practically all through this decade. He rarely puts a wrong foot down in the next 10 years. I say The Trouble with Harry is the only slightly wrong foot that he puts down. Other than that, it's just, if you just look up the movies that start here and come after, it is just his most famous movies. He just is really on fire. But sticking with this movie, Robert Walker, who plays the bad guy in this, who sadly died, I think before the movie came out or right after, again, a very young man. It's not somebody people really know. I think he's one of the greatest screen villains of all time, and it's really hard to distinguish yourself as a screen villain, even in Hitchcock movies, when you have Norman Bates.
Yeah.
When you have, and I'm not saying he's better than Anthony Perkins, but, Hitchcock did psychos really well, like psychotic characters, and Robert Walker plays a character named Bruno Antony, and he's just incredible in this movie. And again, he died, I think, before it came out or right after it came out, so a very young man. And I do wonder, and I would say that a lot about people in the 50s, from Montgomery Clift to Marilyn Monroe to James Dean. Like, what would their careers have been like had they lived? I mean, there's really, I feel like the 50s is a very high concentration of really talented people who died too young.
Yeah.
Or at least it seems that way.
Yeah.
Having not lived through it. But Robert Walker's incredible in this movie. And I noticed, I rewatched it last week, he looks a lot like Bill Murray. And I never noticed it before. Just something about his look looks like Bill Murray. Like, I don't know. It's just because I just was looking at him and I'm like, who does he look like? Who does he look like? And he looks like kind of a youngish Bill Murray. Just, I don't know if I'm the first one on this, but that's something that occurred to me having seen this movie about 10,000 times. The other guy's movie is getting Farley Granger, and he's only in one other Hitchcock movie. So that's half the amount of movies that Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart did with him. But the other movie he was in was called Rope, which I think is also a masterpiece.
Yeah,
so
Rope
I think he
yeah.
has like the most perfect record of a actor. Like, he went 2 for 2. This movie, it's based on a Patricia Highsmith novel. The concept of this movie is something that is very inspiring to me. If you've ever read my script, The Service. And I love the climax of this movie with the carousel going out of control. Yes, the special effects are dated, but it's so well shot and conceived that I still find that sequence thrilling. And I think that's, it's like watching an old Spielberg movie where you could say, oh, this is how the effects were done and I can see through it, but it's staged so well that I'm still caught up in it.
Yeah.
So this for me is a top 5 Hitchcock movie. And again, the run that he goes on after this is unreal and unmatched. So my favorite movie of 1951 is Strangers on a Train. So our next category is Spotlight, where we could spotlight anything from a movie we like, a performance, cinematography, score, stunt sequence, any aspect from a movie that popped for us this year. Now, you and I have talked a bit off mic about this, so I'm going to just throw it to you. Let's go.
Okay. Well, I mean, I wanted to talk about the scores because I think, like, if I'm going to bring something to the podcast,
the scores that are nominated for dramatic score.
For dramatic score, this was, and we talked about it a little bit about voting down the ballot and Franz Waxman winning for A Place in the Sun, which is a gorgeous score. And I'm kind of like looking at all the nominees right now, and I think we had these two Sword and Sandal movies,
Coladas.
scores Quo Vadis, which we discussed, and also David and Bathsheba from Alfred Newman. Not enough can be said about the Newman family, and
Yeah.
Newman's.
Well, tell people who don't know, just to quickly, why, you said the Newman family.
Oh
So
yeah.
let's talk about.
Well, sure. Well, Alfred Newman and his brother Lionel were the heads of music at Fox, and uh, I think Alfred Newman composed the very famous dun, 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 the very
The Fox
fanfare, the
fanfare.
Fox fanfare.
Yeah.
And they are the progenitors, of Randy and then Thomas and David Newman, or David and then Thomas. And so they're the second generation of Newmans. Is also, there's even a third generation of Newmans. So working in Hollywood. So this is a very illustrious.
It's like the Houstons.
It really is an illustrious family, and this is their.
Well, the Coppolas, I guess, too.
This is their family business, and they're good at it.
Yeah.
And it, in a way, I felt a little sad seeing Alfred Newman not winning an Oscar, because Thomas Newman has not won very many Oscars.
Has he ever won at all?
He's never won, and
Okay.
he's been nominated. At this point,
he's still young enough. There's still time.
He's already been nominated 8 or 9 times, I think, at least, maybe
Probably,
more.
Yeah.
And is great influence on my work. And Miklos Rozo, I think we discussed, as part of the overall milieu of that movie, not really.
Yeah, he wasn't given much to work with.
Of the two Sword and Sandal ones, I mean, I think the Newman score was
way better.
Was way better, had more pathos. It was
I listened to it, and I listened to it not having seen the movie, which I think is instructive, because all I had was the music.
Yeah,
I had no association.
It too.
And I think it's just more lush. It's more. I mean, there's so much wrong with Quo Vadis. Like, again, I don't know that another composer with that movie, I don't know what could have been done.
The Newman
it's perfectly serviceable. It's not bad.
The Newman had really, I think it had beautiful melody.
Yes,
it was memorable.
Yeah.
Listen, the Waxman score for A Place in the Sun was also, I mean, it was masterful. Like, this was a generation of composers who, they were not hacks. You could not be a hack in this industry. You couldn't rely on digital software and pre-programmed loops to get you very far.
Plus, you have to write so much music. We mentioned this. Just the amount of music you have to write.
So much music, and this is why there was a studio music department.
Yeah.
And this stuff. Now it doesn't exist in the same way. The studio music department is an executive class these days.
The studio system is gone,
right? So the studio system, but
exactly,
and so that the artisans are all over the place. But they were working hard. They were writing a lot, and they had teams of orchestrators and people to be able to deliver these to the orchestra, and they did really masterful work, and they were well studied. And Waxman, I believe, I'm not sure where he was born, but not America, and they were coming from from the European tradition, and they knew how to write for orchestra. But you have to kind of talk about these two scores. Alex North got nominated for 2 scores. One wonders, maybe he split his own vote.
I'm on record as the vote. I'm not a big believer in vote splitting. Well, I'm a flat earther when it comes to vote.
No,
I think
that this was really like people checking down the ballot, but both of these scores are. To me, they are just they ripped my heart in two. Both of them, they're incredible.
Which two?
This is Death of a Salesman and Streetcar Named Desire.
Yeah,
and they're different. Streetcar Named Desire really kind of announced historically. I mean, it's discussed. I mean, in academic film music programs all the time, Streetcar is discussed as really kind of like the moment when jazz and film music kind of melded.
Because it takes place in New Orleans,
and exactly,
so it's not an accident.
No, of course. So Alex North, I mean, this has always been a feature of film music, is bringing in the geography and finding a way to kind of characterize that in the music. But Alex North did something really, really sophisticated here. It is both cinematic and bringing in, the language of jazz in a really seamless way. And we get that sound really defining so much of cinema for decades to follow.
Yeah.
I think, we don't, I really don't think like until John Williams kind of takes over in a way as like the voice of cinema,
Yeah.
of music and cinema, that we, in this return to something that came earlier, really, like the music of the 40s, and John Williams kind of bringing that bombastic orchestra, as the sound, I mean, the jazz inflected music, I mean, defined so much of film music for decades.
Yeah.
And so Streetcar Named Desire is historically important
Yeah.
score. I think Death of a Salesman, is not listened to as much, and it's not talked about. I listened down to this and it is tense, it is
Yeah, I liked it.
dark, it's brooding.
I don't even know this movie, to be honest. I know the play, of course.
Yeah.
But I don't know this production of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming it's the first production of it.
Yeah.
I've seen Death of a Salesman, but I haven't seen this 51
Yeah.
version. So again, I listened to this score in isolation, which
Yeah.
is a really good way to do it. I did listen to the Streetcar after I watched the movie again.
Yeah.
And I just threw it on because I think the score itself is only 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But as befits the movie, which is fine. But I think, yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, Alex North delivered on two movies at an extremely, extremely high level.
Yeah.
And these are scores that everyone should experience as music, because they are really, really stunning.
Yeah.
They have sweep, they have character. And that would be I would put a spotlight on both of them, and especially Streetcar. I think it's, like we said before, I think it's famous for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think it is interesting also that there's there is jazz elsewhere. There was jazz in A Place in the Sun. There is obviously jazz coming through Gershwin, and this was a time when,
well, the club they go to in American in Paris they're playing
it's
jazz.
a hot jazz, yeah.
And it's like a smoky,
that's right.
Let me show you the real Paris kind of. They don't say that, but it's like underground, not in a seedy way, but it's like,
right.
They go to a small smoke filled place and everyone's having a great time, and the room is as big as this.
That's right. And it's and Gershwin himself was obviously, was very influenced by jazz. So I think this is also kind of a notable moment. They're not incorporating it, in those settings. It's kind of like standalone, I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, Streetcar is different because jazz became integrated into the cinematic language, into the musical language. But it is really interesting to see jazz come through. Again, 1951. This is bebop has happened at this point.
Yeah.
Miles Davis has recorded Birth of the Cool. This is this is a moment when jazz is really kind of becoming known as American classical music as we understand it today. And there is a racial element here. I don't think we say black people on screen on any of these movies. And
no,
I
have to think. No, certainly. Well, Quo Vadis, definitely. No, there's not a single. I don't think we see a single black face. I'm not seeing this to be probably a servant in Place in the Sun.
Right.
Probably a butler, waiter, or something. I don't know for a fact because I haven't seen it, but that would be the only thing. That if we saw any, we saw them in a servile. Position.
Yeah, and certainly in the music. I mean, these composers are white composers, and
these casts are white,
and they are, some of them are refugees, and some of them are not necessarily people coming from a place of kind of blue blood privilege in the way we think of it, but at the same time, there is a racial dynamic here. These are composers integrating the African American musical language, and it took many years, and it's still just happening now. I think it's still that we're seeing more racial diversity in film music. I mean, through the years, yeah, Miles scored a film, and Quincy Jones, of course, had quite a few films, and Terrence Blanchard, and we've had notable names through the years.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Today I think there are a few who are, there's more, and I'm happy to see it. I was literally just thinking of the same kind of music. I just was watching Spider Noir,
Uh-huh.
and has a brilliant score by Chris Bowers. So, which I got to see some of that in concert. It was really fantastic.
Oh, cool.
But like, I think that this also represents that moment, where we talked a lot about the post-war stuff, but we're also talking about, like, 1951. We have a racially segregated country, and
Sure.
all the racial dynamics in Hollywood. And I think it's interesting that it was coming through in the music.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing, because on one hand, it's exposing the country to this music in a broader fashion, but there's a real power dynamic there that's a problem.
Yeah. Only thing I'd add to that is in the movie I mentioned, Strangers on the Train, Dmitri Tiomkin, another great composer from this time. And yeah, Franz Waxman, he wins the Oscar for Sunset Boulevard the year before, which is another score that's incredible and has really lived on. But yeah, I agree. I think Streetcar is the one I would go with. I think it's just, for all the reasons we talked about, it's just the one that kind of sticks with. My spotlight, I actually talked about way back in Categorically Denied when I talked about the screenplay, but I talked about it under the title The Big Carnival, but its real name is Ace in the Hole.
Okay.
So, movie called Ace in the Hole, they renamed it The Big Carnival because it did not make money at first, and they thought slapping another title on it would fix it. Financially, it didn't. So this was a movie directed by Billy Wilder 1 year after Sunset Boulevard. It stars Kirk Douglas, and this was a movie that really languished in obscurity until Criterion brought it back in around 2007. So assholes like me always talk about movies being prescient or ahead of its time, but the character that Kirk Douglas plays in this movie is so amoral and so fucked up. You really can see Michael Douglas playing the same part decades later,
Oh, wow.
and it's still feeling ahead of its time. So, like, if Michael Douglas played this part in like 1987, which you could see, I would have said, "Oh, this was ahead of its time." So, what the movie's about, real briefly, is Kirk Douglas plays this kind of disgraced reporter. He's been fired from every major paper, and he's in this really small newspaper somewhere in like New Mexico, and he's supposed to cover some really sort of like ridiculous story, and he passes a mine that's collapsed on this one guy, and he crawls in, and there's one guy who's like covered in rocks. He's pinned down, and Kirk Douglas starts covering the story, and he controls the story, and he slows down the rescue of this guy so that he can milk the story longer and become kind of the star. And it's so cynical. Billy Wilder's early career is so cynical, but even the cynicism of this makes Double Indemnity and Sunset Boulevard seem almost hopeful by comparison. It's not a better movie. I'm not making that contention. This movie is so black and so cynical. I feel like a great slash dark slash awesome triple feature would be this, Network, and Nightcrawler.
Wow.
I feel, in terms of just like amoral journalism and commenting on the media landscape. And this is a movie, I think it's slightly more known because Criterion's kind of resurrected it, but it comes in between Sunset Boulevard and Stalag 17, and it wasn't a hit. I think it's one of Kirk Douglas's best performances, and it is really, really, really dark. I am not mystified why this did not make money in 1951. I mean, the Hitchcock movie, Strangers on a Train, is dark, but, it's a thriller, and it's got this big action sequence in the end. There's still the Hollywood arc of like, okay, good does triumph. This is the opposite of that. So people should definitely check this out. Another great movie from 1951 that I didn't even know it got nominated for Best Screenplay. So that was a nice surprise in doing the research. I thought this was completely ignored, but I guess because it was Wilder, they were at least willing to recognize.
There was a lot of dark cinema in 1951.
Yeah, and I think it's for the reasons we talked about.
And it's so interesting that the one that somehow won over the Academy,
I think I think that explains it, though.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, Ronen, where can people find you if they want to find you? Anything you want to plug or promote?
Sure. You can find me. You can find me on all the places. I'm on all the socials. I am.
With your name, tell people how
Yes,
to find you.
Ronen Landa at Ronen Landa. You'll
Okay.
find me on Instagram. Um, and yes, what can I promote? There's a lot of fun stuff happening. I've got a couple movies out at festivals right now. I've got a bodybuilder drama that I wrote music for that just I was just in San Francisco at Frameline and it played there beautifully. It's called Test. I have another festival film right now called Love's Company starring Rachel Dratch from SNL. And that just premiered here in LA at Dances with Films. It was a lot of fun. That went over really great. I was excited. And I have a horror film that just kind of wrapped up its festival run, and it has a distributor, so I'm hoping we get information soon. That one's called Bloodshine, and really proud of that score, and people who are into weird, very dark folk horror might get a kick out of it. It's pretty out there, and it was a fun score because I got to record my daughter on that one, so she sings on that. So
that's so cool.
That's a special one for me.
Cool. My daughter will be on this podcast at some point. Speaking of, you can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd, both Edward Clow. You can check out some scripts I've written on Script Revolution. If you go on Vimeo and search me up, you can see some short films I've done. If you have any questions, you can email me at hindsightingquestions@gmail.com. Ronen, thank you so much. This was a really great conversation.
This was fun. Thank you.
And thank you for, of course, you're the only person besides me who's worked on this podcast. So I'm glad I finally got you in the chair. So now we've come to the programming announcement that I teased up top, and that said people clutching their phones for the entire run of this conversation. So no filmmaker is going to come up for me this decade than Alfred Hitchcock. He's going to come up again and again. As I've said in my Strangers spiel, this is his most productive and consistent decade. So to celebrate his influence, we're going to do a mini-series called Big Hitch Energy, where we look at the movies not made by Hitchcock, but that wouldn't exist without him. Next episode, we kick off Big Hitch Energy as David Sipkin and I talk about David Fincher's The Game. Till then, looking forward to looking back.